the agenda?
I'll make a motion.
Thank you.
I'll second that.
Thank you.
And I'll be recusing myself. That was it. That means.
No, this is to adopt the
Oh,
agenda.
oh, sorry. They're running through there.
The agenda.
I'll make a motion.
Thank you.
I'll second that.
Thank you.
And I'll be recusing myself. That was it. That means.
No, this is to adopt the agenda.
Oh, sorry. They're running through there.
The agenda.
I'll make a motion.
Thank you.
I'll second that.
Thank you.
And I'll be recusing.
Though we cannot hear. We cannot hear we heard the presentation start and then we can't hear anymore.
Yeah, this is, okay, can you hear us now, Greg?
Yes, we can. Thank you. Oh,
Greg, was that your only comment? Can we move on now that we've resolved that?
yeah, we actually did send something in to the email, but I think it was late for the agenda, so it's in the email for the Planning Commission.
But does it pertain to a particular project?
Yes, on the agenda later today.
Okay, perfect. So yes, you will have an opportunity to speak then.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, so thank you for alerting us to our audio issues. Next item on our agenda is the consent calendar. So the first item on the consent calendar is the approval of the meetings from February 15th, 2023. Do I have a motion to adopt the minutes, or do I have any comments that would require a revision?
Minutes were good. I'll move to adopt.
I'll second.
Okay, and Eugene, you mentioned.
Recusing myself.
Okay, so we will now vote on the motion to approve the minutes. So John,
Aye.
Kristen is aye.
Glenn is I.
Thank you. Next item on our agenda is a study session. This is for SSO2-23 D Diablo LLC, C1 zoning. So it is a study session to review proposed exterior modifications to an existing downtown commercial building within the downtown East End district located at 3474 Mount Diablo Boulevard. And I believe Samina will be presenting this to us. And as a reminder, this is an informational item only to provide feedback to the applicant, and no formal action will be taken at this time.
Okay. Yes, Samina, can you hear us?
Yes, I can.
Okay,
Want to
Sonia, I
share
guess, are you gonna present the images?
Samina is a panelist, and so she's going to share her screen.
Yes, I'll start sharing my screen.
Visible. Exactly.
Sonia, can you please enable the screen sharing option?
Okay, let's need to make you a where's the sorry, need to make her a co-host. And Right? Should be a co-host now. That should be able to move you over.
Okay.
Yeah.
Can you
think we're all
see
set.
me? Okay.
Yes.
Okay, great. Good evening, commissioners, staff, and members of the public. The item before you today is study session 0223, seeking design feedback for the exterior modifications proposed to an existing downtown commercial building at 3474 Mount Diablo Boulevard. Prior to finalizing the design for a design review permit, the subject property is zone C1 and located in the downtown specific plan area boundary, East End district facing Mount Diablo Boulevard. The subject parcel is a developed property with an existing commercial building where previously the entire space was used for a full service restaurant activity. Per the downtown specific plan, the East End district is envisioned to primarily be commercial and auto service district, offering a variety of users, design, and informal arrangement of buildings. Here are some pictures of the existing conditions showing the existing building entrance and orientation towards the parking lot on the west side, and stairs facing Mount Diablo Boulevard connecting the building secondary frontage from the sidewalk. The project proposes to reposition the entrance and establish a better relationship between the building and the Mount Diablo Boulevard streetscape. The design proposes to improve the west and south facades of the building by proposing an exterior deck and replacing the existing narrow windows with glass French doors. The project proposes adding new exterior lights, including lanterns and string lights on the deck, and improved landscaping. The project would change the exterior finish from white stucco to desert stone color stucco. The change of color proposed for the exterior entrance door is deep red, and the other all French doors would be charcoal gray. Per the C1 zoning district setback requirement, there shall be a landscape setback of at least 10 feet from any street line for any structure in the C1 zoning district. As terraces and decks counts towards landscaping, the deck addition and the proposed landscaping would meet the setback requirement. Additionally, the project proposes shrub fronting the deck, vine at the deck face, and turf in the public right-of-way along the sidewalk. No changes are proposed to the parking area or the driveway entrance. Since this is a study session application, no formal action is required, and therefore staff recommends and requests the Design Review Commission to review the proposal and provide feedback to the applicant. With this, I conclude my presentation, and I'm available if there are any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Samina. Commissioners, do you have any questions for Samina?
Yes, on the website, you have a drawing that shows the setback, and it shows a concrete patio that appears to go into the next door neighbor's property. Is that being modified? And also, has anyone addressed what the view is from people sitting on that patio, which is on the east side of the building, to the medical center that will be built right next to it?
Yes, Commissioner. Staff has recommended to the applicant to provide site sections and also a contextual elevation drawing with the neighboring new building on Mount Diablo Boulevard. And no, the revision, we haven't received any revised drawings, so that the patio would be addressed at the time of the design review permit application, I believe.
Any other commissioner questions? And then do we have comments from, or presentation from the applicant?
I do have a presentation from the applicant, and the applicant is here.
Good evening, members of the commission and public. I'm Sudesh Mohindu with SCFM Design Studio. And this project came to us very recently. I'm very pleased about it because it came to us when I was already working with the city of Lafayette on taking a look at the pluses and the minuses of all the parklets and the outdoor, encouraging for them to improve their appearance. These are all the ones that happened during COVID, of course, and also to set standards for the long-term viability of having outdoor seating and activation, particularly along Mount Diablo Boulevard and Lafayette Circle as it goes over by the La Fiesta Square and the Fiesta Lane projects. So when this came, we kind of looked at this project. The developer approached us and we thought this would be kind of perfect for it lends itself to having a better relationship with the street that is now being developed with over the years with the Mercantile project, the Town Center project, where Pizza Antica and all of those tenants are, and including on the east side, the more recently, the Headlands Brewery project. There's recognition that the buildings that are very close to the street, close to the sidewalk, but traditionally have not been designed more like a suburban shopping center approach where you get into the driveway, that they need to have a relationship that works. And so here is just showing you some overall images. This building kind of stands by itself in a way, even though it is part of a complex, which is the rest of the shopping center. But its proximity to the street makes it obviously more visible. But the building is designed still with the approach that the parking's from the entrance is from the west side, and it didn't really have any relationship to the street. It sits up on a berm and it's kind of hidden behind a tree, as you can see. Can we go to the next slide, please? I'm going to quickly take you through. So here it is. It sort of teases you, but it still doesn't allow. And one thing we did notice is that the patio that currently exists for this location is, as you mentioned, is facing east. It's really not the best orientation, frankly, because regardless of the fact that now, of course, you have a larger project coming up next door to us. So to us, that became all the more reason that we would like to bring an outdoor patio out on the south side. That is the better orientation for sunny side. And so we're keeping the east side patio, knowing very well that'll probably act as an overflow patio perhaps, but the choice of people sitting out at this restaurant would be more on the south side first. That wasn't one of my slides. But how that came up.
Yeah, sorry about that.
That's all right. That's okay. It doesn't even look like me.
So make sure that the audience can see your presentation. All right. Move this in back door. Sorry. Okay. Then we can just share.
Yes, if you stay on this for a moment, I want to look at the lower picture.
You can just do the screen too. That way we're able to share this screen over here. And then so you just have to go back the way you were, sorry. And then it's clear this timer. Okay, now you should be able to scroll through it. You were all right.
Can you scroll it up so we can see the lower photograph? Sorry, I'm sorry. Yeah, up like that. So we, yes, I have this photograph because it's really literally across the street from where we are, and as you can see, the library was kind of our inspiration, actually, even though we're not doing much to the building. But it has a very simple relationship to the street with openings. And just like the library is fairly close to the edge of the sidewalk and the library complex, I mean. And let's go to the next one. So here are more close-ups. Now, if you notice on the west side, we have these 3 openings, windows that are, it's hard to put a style to them, frankly, but they sort of reform 70s style, I guess I call it. And the corner, but the rest of the building on the north side is kind of ignored. And so it almost looks like a house, perhaps, where that's the kitchen or something like that, but it doesn't look like a public or commercial retail building. So we're altering that a little bit, but the entrance is being kept where it is. We're not changing the entrance. We're simply taking out, it's more of a cleaning up of the facade, developing better window line so that there's more interaction between the inside and outside, and adding the deck. Let's go to the next one. So here is, the deck is being added right up to the property line, so there is no easements required, as the case is on with many other outdoor patios on Mount Diablo, like the one in Clock Tower, Pachi's Pizza, for example. We had to go through an elaborate process when we did that patio. But here, we've extended it to keep it simple. It'll give us almost 10 feet of patio, which is enough for the kind of use we're thinking of putting here. And the rest will be landscaped berm. So as you're walking on the sidewalk, you have about approximately 5 feet of landscape berm. And then you will have the deck, which will be a little higher. We are maintaining the tree. That's a beautiful tree. And so we're maintaining that. And there'll be a hole cut out in the deck, and we'll make sure that the arborist is involved at that time to make sure the tree doesn't suffer any damage. The stairs that come down on the east side have been moved a bit. They are right now at a little bit of west of where we are showing, right at the corner, and we are moving it so that there can be a connection between the east patio and the new south patio. That's because if people come out on the south side, don't find a table, they can scoot around. They don't have to go inside the building and then having to come out again. Next. That's the view of the building. As you can see on the west side, so we have very simple rhythm of openings, that some of them are doors. The ones that are facing south are going to be doors, and some of them are facing west. Those are just going to be, they're going to look like doors, but they're not doors, except for the entry door. And then the ones that are on the north side, so that the building doesn't look like it's been stopped and the window line doesn't continue, that's going to be a trellis elements that you'll see. You will see it better in the next slides. Let's go to the next one here. There we go. And this is what I meant by, so there's a gradual stepping up as you, the deck is about, I would say 4+ feet above the sidewalk level. And these are the new steps. Next. This is the relationship to the next door building. Our building is about 10 feet. And I think from what I could tell from the plans of the new building, Lafayette Lane, I believe it's called, if I'm not mistaken, that they are also having a setback of approximately the same. So there'll be a 20-foot total, or close to 20 feet between the two buildings. Let's go next. That's the front elevation. So as you can see, we have taken out the corner windows. There were sort of half windows in the existing building and made those into structural elements so that we can open up the window line in the middle. Next. This is the west side, and this is what I meant by we're continuing the rhythm up to a certain point so that the entry door doesn't seem like it's at the end of the storefronts, but more like in the middle. Next. This is just some indication of what kind of lighting and string lights on the colors of the building. And I believe that's the end of my presentation. I have some extra images here just in case. This is not quite a comparable relationship because Headlands Brewery has a somewhat imposing structure. We're going to have umbrellas instead, and there's no fixed structure being proposed at the patio. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioners, do you have any questions for the applicant?
Yes, I do. Well articulated. I think we're all just warming up to get back in person meeting. So I think thank you for all your patience today. But on your presentation on the base where you have the patio, can you articulate for us what materiality there is
Yes.
and how you're going to
Yes.
penetrate that?
Sure, I should have probably mentioned that, but the building is is stucco right now, is gonna remain stucco. The portion that is, the railing is gonna be metal, very simple welded metal. The portion that's below the railing, that area, yes, above the berm, that's going to have hardy plank siding. And the reason for that is we wanted to ventilate the underside of the deck. It'll be very tight. So that rodents don't just sort of hang out there, but it's going to allow for ventilation of that space underneath. So it's not a wall, so to speak. It's like a tight trellis using hardy plank, and it'll be colored. I don't think it's as we refine it's our intention would be to make it more like it belongs to the landscape element. So it'll be a darker in color, perhaps a slightly greenish gray. So it sort of acts as a backdrop, like a footing, and the building is sitting above. We don't want it to look like it's part of the building. It's more part of the landscape. And we're proposing growing creeping fig on that wall, in addition to, of course, the planned material that will be in front. We actually had a lot of success with creeping fig on this side. If you ever go to the town center, when the town center was built years ago, it had these low walls because there's a sidewalk above as you walk along Pizza Antica and few other, I think there's a Peruvian restaurant there. If you walk along, and you will see there's a plinth wall about 3 feet high. And we were not the designers of that building, but we were working on the Mercantile project. And that it's historically that project got built. It wasn't really that well received in the city, and the city decided to work with have us look at ways to sort of small ways of improving it. So one of the things we proposed, I remember years ago, I was a lot younger at that time, it was having creeping fig on the wall. It has done very well. If you drive by there, it makes it look like it's not part of the building, but more part of the landscape that's in front.
Yeah, so like a foreground, middle ground.
Yes,
background
exactly.
relationship in the landscape. Okay, thank you very much. Thank you.
Other commissioner questions? I have one question. I see that you're doing a new stair from the sidewalk up to the deck.
Yes.
Are you just accommodating ADA by entering in through the front? You don't need to do a ramp? or
That's an
anything?
emergency
Okay.
stair, and which doesn't need to be ADA compliant.
I can't remember, do we open this for public comment or just commissioner comment?
Okay.
All right, thank you. So are there any comments from members of the public? Please feel free to raise your hand.
Do you have the,
These are not related to this one, I don't think.
okay,
These are for.
Can you share the menu?
Well, don't know who exactly is gonna be there. There are two or three, but it will definitely be food related, that I can tell you. Casual food related. Yes.
I have no one on Zoom. And,
Okay, thank you. All right, well, if there are no public comments, then I don't think you need a rebuttal. So, commissioners, would anyone like to start with comments?
Well, I could start this
Okay.
one. It's pretty straightforward for me. I think from a urban design standpoint, character of that street, the same, Mount Diablo corridor as it aspires to future aspirations of our city, maintaining the local scales, but at the same time, showing some energy of vibrancy as we evolve as a community. I think this one here fits into that character of that and spilling away and inside and outside activities to create an experience that's very unique to Lafayette. That's really cool too. Having conversations be heard on the sidewalk as you take your dog. That whole atmosphere is really cool. I think it's also south elevation. So having canopy and further articulation to skin and filter the light from that direction to create layering effect, it would be really cool. And I think that's what you have here. So my comments would be that as this is a study session material, I would request that the applicant give us further articulation of the base, right? Right at the engaged scale, right by the sidewalk where I, with the dog, would really experience the beauty of that elements you're putting in there. Also night lighting too, because we want safe streets, but also enjoyable streets at night. And if this project could further energize and give that character Lafayette as it aspires for the future, would be great. So you'd mentioned how you were going to put hardy panels around there, but also study the landscape even at that edge, obviously, as you go up. The heating poles, I guess, and you may have lighting in there too. And then the canvas, right? Really well articulated piece that fits into that vocabulary. And then the glass, is that going to be reflective glass? And so I think the idea that beautiful Peruvian and the hamburger and all those mercantile buildings, I think it's enjoyable when you can see through the building and to see the depth of the building instead of being taken by reflection of mirrors all over the place. So I think
Or tinted.
I would appreciate if it's more of a clear glass that you could see into the building and enjoy the experience that people in that space. So I want to go there and eat.
All right.
Okay, that's it. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Go ahead, please.
Okay, thanks. This certainly looks like a nice refresh, sort of taking a light touch and refreshing a somewhat tired building and giving it a new character. So I appreciate that very much. The relationship that you talk about with the sidewalk and the building, I think is as Eugene said, I think is a very strong plus and something I'd like to see more along our Main Street, Mount Diablo Boulevard. The one comment I have, and I don't know if we get there's a front perspective on page 5 in our handout. Can we scroll to that?
yeah, I think so. Share my screen again.
Or unless it's on the
I
applicant's.
should have them, it may not be in on the same page number, but I should have all the perspective.
I'm considering the relationship between the deck terrace in the proposed design and the sidewalk. I understand that you've designed it to have the floor level. Well, so here's a side elevation of it, which I can kind of. Okay, that's good enough. That's fine. I'm looking at a perspective.
Probably zoom in if possible.
The deck is set at the same elevation as the floor of the restaurant, which I
Yes.
understand. It is a little bit disappointing not to bring it closer to the sidewalk, not to lower it down. If you look at in the view that I'm looking at, you've got pedestrians walking by and it's at the shoulder height of a tall man. And, anybody other than a tall man is not going to be looking through those windows. If there is any way to make your accessibility work and drop that a foot or two, I think it would help the relationship between the sidewalk, the deck and the restaurant. I don't know if it's practical or not. But other than that, I like seeing the sidewalk activated and I'd just like to see more of that.
Yeah, I think it's a good change in updating the property. I agree with most of the comments that were made today. The only thing I want to see resolved is the infringement on the patio. I don't think I want to see a project that continues that infringement on the next property.
Can I speak at this point? I'm not sure what you mean by infringement on the next property.
If you pull up that first one that I had, the setback drawing.
Yeah, site plan or setback drawing.
We have a survey that's in your package.
Yeah, see, this shows something different.
That
than-
that
yeah,
doesn't show it.
Yeah,
Yeah, you have to look at the setback drawing.
And I think this
yeah,
is
the
in
survey
Samia's.
drawing.
The survey drawing was in the city package that was sent
Yeah.
to you. I didn't include it in I have it in my hand, but it's very small.
If you like, I can pull it up. I just need a minute. Got it.
The property line just
If
shaves
you look
off.
at the property
A touch of
line,
the
it
patio.
wedges out as you're going north, it infringes into the next property.
And it looks like you're proposing to build a new railing around that existing patio?
No,
No,
no, we're actually not proposing to do
do anything.
anything on the existing patio.
Yeah, in the survey, it shows that the existing patio is on the neighbor's property as well.
Oh. Okay.
I don't have it in the staff report.
Yeah, it was the,
I'm sure that will get.
It's on
you
the-
showed it at the very beginning of the
It's a
session.
it's a survey.
Yeah, Samina has
It has
it.
the
Can you
setback.
see my screen? I'm sharing the survey map.
Get the Zoom. Okay, click on Zoom. Yeah.
I'm sure that'll come up during when they start constructing a new project, and we'll obviously have to cut back. If that's the case,
Well, I think your answer would be you will conform to code.
we'll conform
and, all
absolutely.
Yeah,
And so you would remove the
Yes,
existing.
yes, yes,
Non-conforming,
right.
yeah. This concrete slab.
Okay, we can see it as.
Right.
Okay, that's all my
Because
comments.
in this proposed south elevation, it looks like there's going to be a new railing at that existing deck a little bit, right?
Yes,
Just up to the property line,
Okay.
just so people don't fall
Okay.
down. So I see what you mean.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Can I
Yes.
approach, are you talking about?
yeah, it's a little pie shape.
Oop,
Oops,
yeah.
I'm sorry, okay. There you go.
There it is.
Yeah,
Are you talking about this?
Yes, I am talking about that.
Okay, well, that will have to be.
Yeah.
Cut back.
Just one more comment.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I missed the bottom comments on my list. You mentioned planting turf in the strip against the curb. Did I hear that correctly?
Yes, it's actually that we haven't really. We were suggesting, I believe, 3 different plants. We were starting with the creeping fig. And then we had, I believe, if we go to our landscape sheet here, I believe we had star jasmine.
yeah.
I'm gonna say. It's on our material board. And then we said turf. Now, the turf is no more grass. It's the kind of drought resistant native cider native no more grass. It's similar to what's there over at the Veterans Building.
Okay, my only comment is on whatever you plant there should not only be drought resistant, but traffic resistant. It's gonna-
Yes. Yeah, and I think that for that 5-foot distance, that may be too much. So we might, what we meant was really the no more grass was really going to be more on this side of the stair. So that we're not quite sure how the landscaping and maybe we'll study them more carefully. We want this to flow, but not here because we're only 5 feet here. So with 5 feet, I think it's enough to have 1 or 2. But you're absolutely right. We don't want people trampling.
Yeah, if you're planning anything in that zone by that 12-inch tree there, between the sidewalk and the curb down the bottom.
Lower down a little, yeah.
Yes, right,
Oh,
right.
here.
That
No,
area, if I understood what Samina said, that there was gonna be turf planted there. And I would
Oh.
just advise you consider it for those 2 reasons.
All right, I don't think we were proposing anything in here.
Okay,
Our
maybe I
proposal-
misunderstood.
Yeah,
So I will finish up with my comments. I agree with my commissioner's comments. I think what I would like to see in addition is that there is some awareness of what you just mentioned of thinking of what's happening at the eastern property so
Yes.
that there is a complementary relationship. They don't need to blend or match, but I think just understanding that there's a connection, especially since you're talking so much about creating the street elevation and understanding, creating that sense of connection of the street elevation. So using the
Mhm.
landscape to do that. And then I would also encourage you, just when you come before us again, to make sure you've included all the drawings that we'd like to see, such as a site section and
Mhm.
some representation of the relationship to the neighboring buildings. I know that the planners can help you make sure you have all of that complete, but that always expedites our ability to review and approve any work, as long as the more complete the package is. Do you have any other questions for us?
no, I think we're fine.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, next on our agenda are continued public hearings. The first item here, we have 2 continued public hearings, and the first one we'll talk about today is for 33 Topper Court. So this is a request for design review for renovation and addition to the existing single-family residence, increasing height from 22.2 to 27.7.5 inches, and adding 996 square feet of living area for a total of 4,447 square feet. Anna is going to be presenting to us.
I will sometimes enter full everything up here. By the way, everyone, there's free soda bread at the city council meeting upstairs. I almost nobody is up there.
I have a question. I have all the public comment. Is there any particular order I'm supposed to take them? I'm not used to it happening in person.
It's the chair's decision,
All right.
determining the
Okay.
order, yes.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
And I think you're in Cindy's trying to promote you. Okay.
Yeah, but I want to disconnect from the sound.
Oh, yeah.
I'm not sure how to do that.
I can show you. It's.
Oh, I remember my old days. Yeah, welcome back. Okay. Here you go, my friend. Here.
Thank you.
Yeah.
You're muted. And then I'm sure the speakers are on. Okay, microphone's off. You good. Strong, strong, good. How to do it.
Okay.
Maybe if you're going to share with that, you need to make the photos. Only sound. Yeah.
Okay. Perfect, okay. So thank you for bearing with me. As Commissioner Seidel said, my name is Anatole. I'm a planning technician with the city. And tonight I will be presenting on VR 1522. This project is located at 33 Topper Court. Before I get too far into the presentation, I would like to make a correction to the published staff report. This was pointed out to me that on page 2, the table that shows zoning compliance indicated that the proposed front yard setback is 36 feet 6 inches. That should have read 24 feet 9.5 inches. So the project is still compliant with zoning regulations, but I missed that number on the staff report. So 33 Topper Court is located at the end of a cul-de-sac of Topper Court, which is a small spur off of Topper Lane. The project proposes to remove an existing portion of the house at the rear, which includes a first and second story. So this is outlined in red. And the existing second floor outlined in green is concentrated over the left or north portion of the residence, and it's set back from the street. So between removing the section of the back of the house and then adding to expand the second story, the overall increase in square footage is 996 square feet. That brings the residence in total from approximately 3,450 square feet to just under 4,450. The project then proposes to expand the second floor. So this is again, the second floor outlined in green, to be centered over the residence, which brings the massing toward the front of the property. There are 4 two-story homes in the vicinity and a few more down Topper Lane, but these homes are not very prominent when viewed from the street on Topper Court, since they are set back from the street, they're concealed by vegetation, they have low roof pitches that reduce their overall height and appearance from the street. So because 33 Topper Court is a more visible site from the street, staff have recommended 3 project-specific conditions of approval to reduce the height and overall appearance of massing for the project. So I will go into more detail on those recommended conditions throughout the presentation and at the end. The garage and front porch roof proposed both maintain the low roof pitch that is consistent with the existing development in the neighborhood, and the extension of the porch roof along the front, as well as a small step back portion of the second story, both add visual interest and shadow relief to the facade. The steeper roof pitches, the increased area at the second story, and its location towards the front of the lot. These all contribute to the residence being seen as more massive. So for this reason, staff recommends stepping back the second story along the length of the facade, not just in the portion in the middle here, and reducing the roof pitch and height from 10-12 to the extent feasible over the steeper gabled sections of the roof. So while the overall building height is increased, the privacy impacts are decreased along the property lines. So the number of windows, this is the view from the northern property line. So the number of windows looking down at neighbors is reduced from 3 to 1. And this, along with existing mature vegetation along the property line, mitigates privacy impacts from this side. And you can see here an example of how the building mass is shifted toward the front of the lot. It's up and forward. And similar to the previous slide, this is the view from the south side property line. So the number of windows, again, at this property line or this side is reduced from 3 to 1 window. This helps to mitigate privacy impacts from adding the second floor windows. When viewed from the rear, you can see that there are large windows added at the second floor, different from the sides. So staff have determined that privacy impacts are mitigated through existing vegetation along the rear property line and the approximately 60-foot distance to the neighboring residence to the rear, which is also a 2-story building. So this lot at 33 Topper Court is slightly elevated compared with neighbors to the left and right. You can see that here. This contributes to the perceived massing of the structure, which would be mitigated again by reducing the height and pitch of the tallest and steepest roof sections. The image at the top shows the subject property in relation to the 2-story residence, which is directly to the rear, while the bottom image shows the relationship between the two homes directly to the side of 33 Chopper Court as viewed from essentially the center of the cul-de-sac. The existing floor plan shows 4 bedrooms and 2 bathrooms at the first floor, in addition to living, dining, kitchen, storage, and the attached garage. The second floor has 2 bedrooms and 1.5 baths. And the new first floor plan includes, again, 1 bedroom, 2.5 bathrooms, a playroom, office, dining, kitchen, and the attached garage will remain. At the second floor, there are 4 bedrooms, 2 full baths, and a laundry room proposed. And you can see here in the laundry room that that is where the area of the second floor is stepped back from the front. And the recommendation from staff is to step back the entire second story along the front to reduce that overall massing in front of the lot again. So staff received several public comments with the following main concerns: that a second story is out of character for the neighborhood, that the proposed building is too massive with visibility impacts from the new structure, the privacy concerns that arise from adding a second story with windows, and that the overall floor area of the residence is much greater compared to other homes in the vicinity. And finally, the story poles, when erected, they appeared to depict a much larger structure than what was anticipated based on renderings that had been shown to staff and neighbors. So to address these comments and further ensure that the proposal does comply with the residential design guidelines, staff have recommended the following project-specific conditions. Oh wait, no, I will get into those next, I'm sorry. So just to address some of those comments, the existing residence is 22 feet 2 inches at its highest point, and the proposed residence would be approximately 27 feet 7 inches at its highest roof ridge. So this is an increase of roughly 5.5 feet. However, the steeper roof pitch, the concentration of the mass toward the front of the lot lead to a greater impact than initially expected. Shown here are some examples of a mix of both evergreen and deciduous mature vegetative screening at the side and rear property lines. This mitigates visibility and privacy impacts to the neighboring properties. And adding larger trees at the front of the residence would provide additional screening from when viewed from the street. There are several design and architectural elements of the proposal that exemplify the residential design guidelines and work quite well with the vicinity, which are outlined here. So gabled roofs, recessed entryways with covered porches, traditional style window grills, muted colors. These are all seen throughout the neighborhood and are incorporated into this project. So with some changes to the height and massing, the project will be even better aligned with these residential design guidelines. So to get into my staff recommended project specific conditions, on the first bullet point, the original staff recommendation in the draft conditions of approval was to just reduce the 10 to 12 roof pitch. And that has been updated. That recommendation should also include reducing the overall height of the second story as well, just to make that condition more clear. So in addition to the height, staff recommends stepping back the second story along the entire front of the residence. And also recommend planting at least 1 large evergreen tree at the northwest corner of the residence to provide screening when viewed from the street. And so the changes to building height, roof pitch, and facade, I recommend they be reviewed by a design review commission chair or designate prior to, after submitting for construction drawings. And then the changes to landscaping, tree proposal, et cetera, could be a change reviewed by planning staff and approved by planning staff. So in conclusion, staff recommendation is to adopt resolution 2023-04, approving the project subject to conditions. And that concludes my presentation. I'm available for questions, and I believe the applicant team has a presentation of their own. Thank you.
Is there a reason why we're going with a resolution tonight instead of asking for a continuance to see these things as the whole board?
So,
Are we at a time deadline on this approval or something?
no,
Okay.
I think the recommended conditions of approval, some of them are pretty significant that it's hard to confidently imagine them without seeing the presentation again.
Mhm.
Okay. Other commissioner questions? We're ready for the applicant presentation?
Hi, thank you, Travis. I'm Tom Harold, partner with Daydream Projects. I think everyone, Dalen, Burles and Jennifer Knipp, homeowners and clients, and Jennifer Brookson, she's the project architect. I think what we'll do is let Dalen start off here and introduce him and his family and the needs for their home.
We have a 10-minute timer for our applicant team.
Get that set up.
Sure.
Okay, I'll let me share the screen.
Save it for you.
We start now?
Yeah.
Yes.
It's on. It's on.
It's on.
Ah, fantastic. Well, Dalen? Let's take it.
Other side, okay. Yeah, I can take it down, I can let you know when it goes, and
Soccer, you can.
if you want to share, sorry, if you want to share.
yeah.
I will keep you kind of in the background, I'll let you know. You go ahead and share again,
Thanks so much, Dave. That's a little, sorry.
sorry, it's okay. Whenever you're able, but.
We can move to the next slide.
That's right. We'll start here.
Sure.
So thank you commissioners and neighbors who turned out and those who are joined online. I imagine tonight to be quite emotional, so I try to stick with facts. And come this summer, it will be 12 years since Jennifer, my wife, the Knipp side, and I checked out Lafayette and said, this is where we want to move so our child can go to the best schools in the area. And so we moved down here. 2 years later, ta-da, we're having twins. Life at that point was beyond our ability to even dream beyond a good nap. And so when the opportunity presented itself to actually drive through Lafayette 12 years ago, we fell in love with Topper Courts because it was this offshoot that was like, oh my goodness, we could see us walking the kids to school, whether it was at Lafayette Elementary or Stanley Crossway. And so when this property presented itself, we're like, yeah, we got to do it. And the market was crazy, and we just said, yes, let's do it. And in going through the process, what we continue to hear from the neighbors was, it's a great place to raise your kids. We're like, yeah, that sounds amazing. Let's do this. So upon moving in, we started to realize the state of the house and the property, and there were going to be constraints to us living there. And if COVID has taught us anything, you don't know what's going to happen. So you've got to try to maximize for your family's wellness. And so when we did that, can you go to the next slide, please? The constraints started to pop in. And so out of those properties on Topper Court, not Topper Lane, Topper Court, our property is among the smallest, the bottom quartile. So us being able to build out was going to be impacted because we actually want to reclaim the backyard for our kids. We actually want to reduce the footprint of the house so there was more space and the visibility was better. But in doing so meant that we could really only do one thing because we also have a drainage easement and a pool is there. So we had to consider how we go up as tastefully and gracefully as possible. Now, in going through this, we're like, okay, that's great, but what else do we have to consider? 2 adults who work from home professionally. We can't have our kids busting in. As much as we love them, it doesn't really go well with productive meetings. We have 3 active kids with their own activities that need their own space to do their own thing. And so we sat out and talked with Jenny and Tom and went through all the things, and you could start to see them like, okay, let's see how we can make this work. Now, when we think about what we're solving for, may we go to the next slide, please? we're trying to get to a reasonable square footage for each of our residents at 33 Topper. When you look at the properties on Topper Courts, the average square foot conditions to that of the residents, it averages more than 1,300 square feet per resident. With our proposed plan and build for 5 residents, we would get closer to 8. And by no means are we trying to do this as a spec house. We're not developers, we're a family of 5. When we moved in, we were the only family with 3 kids under 10. And now we remain the only families. There's another family that moved in with 2 kids. However, when we think about what does this mean, we bought this house, we are into it. And so can we go to the next slide, please? Which is why when we went about this, we just said, these are our needs. And we are so pleased to see that City of Lafayette actually adopted the amended housing element in January, which specifically calls out for large families of 5 or more, they have different housing needs. And it's my ask of you and behalf of the rest of my family, that the commission and commissioners look at this as such. And the guidelines are there, but as far as I can tell, they're not necessarily regulations. And so we want to do this tastefully in a way that does balance the needs of the family with the characteristics of the community and the courts. But we're thinking about our future for the family too. And so I'll turn back over to Tom, and Jenny will take you through the specifics.
Thank you. So before we put pen to paper on this project, we sat down with Dalen and Jennifer and came up with priorities for the project, neighborhood priorities, which are going to be common good things, and then also our design priorities. The neighborhood priorities were to preserve and improve privacy, harmonize natural and built resources, and environmental stewardship. On the design side, it was meeting the functional space requirements for the family, honoring, reflecting Lafayette's unique architectural heritage, and balancing contemporary aesthetic with neighborhood characteristics. This obviously is a bird's eye view of the court. I'm not going to spend much time on this. Anna did a fantastic job with all this already, more or less laying it, but you could see where the existing, or the outline in red is the existing home with the new design overlaid. And so the reason we went with an efficient 2-story was that it creates space and helps us reduce waste. Obviously, you can see we're lopping off a big section of the existing 2-story that encroaches on or oversees the house to the north, and then also encroaches upon the one over to the east, removing the parking carport area, which also creates better space for the house with the neighbors to the south and to the west. I think probably it's good for me to turn it over, and we can go to the next slide. I'm going to turn it over to Jenny, because I think that talking a little bit about the style and some of the gabling and some of the pitches is probably valuable time well spent for us here.
Yeah, I wanted to give you some background on how we approach the design and the architecture of the home. So when we were approaching the design of 33 Topper Court, we were influenced by the timelessness of the architecture of Lafayette's historic homes. As you can see on the slide, images of historical homes that we pulled from the Lafayette Historical Society archives. Those are the 4 on the left, with our rendering of our proposed house on the right. There are 3 common characteristics in these historical Lafayette homes that influenced our design. 1, the front porch. 2, the proportion of the gabled roof ends with the overall width of the home. And 3, the steep roof pitch. So these beautiful architectural features give us historical context for our design, and also allow us to achieve the design guideline objectives of minimizing the overall appearance of the 2-story home. And I'm going to explain how. So first, we designed a porch across the front of the home to create a visual break in the 2-story volume. Second, behind the porch, we formed the home into 3 volumes. We have 2 gabled ends, one on the left and one on the right. And then offsetting those gabled ends is the centerpiece that sets back from the front and is lower in height. And then lastly, and significantly, the steeper roof pitch. It allows us to reduce the volume of the home on the 2nd floor. If the roof pitch were to be flatter, the walls on the 2nd floor would have to get taller in order to have occupiable space in those rooms, and therefore we would create more volume of home on the 2nd floor. The steeper roof pitch minimizes the height of the walls at the 2nd floor, and therefore minimizes the overall volume and appearance of the 2nd story. Next slide.
Sure. here really the important part we wanted to share here was, I think consistent with what Anna said, was that here's some first 1 and 2 story homes that are adjacent to the property on 33 Topper Court. We just want to show that the palette is consistent with the neighbors, as well as some of just the architectural detailing and things like that. I think, and if you wouldn't mind maybe going back to the bird's eye view. Yeah, we went a little quicker than I thought there, so that's great. But I think one thing we did want to mention that we also were achieving by kind of consolidating the home in a smaller area was, to Dalen's point, is that we wanted to preserve as much of what was there as possible. They have a very active family. We were, by doing the design that we accomplished, we were able to keep all of the existing landscaping, including a lot of very mature trees that are very pretty, some very nice cedar trees, redwoods, and those kind of things. We also didn't need to send any of the pool or existing hardscape to the landfill. Another important part was that it really, with a little bit more of an efficient footprint of the building, we're also able to reduce the amount of concrete footing, which we all love concrete, but it is a big emitter of carbon to produce it. So we also thought that that was also a good benefit for, not necessarily exactly the neighborhood, but for all of us in general. I think that those are probably our, most significant points we wanted to share with you. And I guess with 50 seconds left, we'll wrap up our presentation, take the time, and we're here to answer any questions from the commission or from the public.
We'll start out. Do any commissioners have questions for the applicant?
No.
I do have one question. You mentioned that if you were to change the roof slope, you would have to raise the wall, but it looks like you have a top plate height now of 8 feet.
We do not. The top plate is 5'11". So you
Okay.
can look at that front rendering, you can see the head height of those windows are 6'8", and the roof pitches down below that.
Okay.
So it's quite low. So if we were just to hold that point and lower it, we would have, you wouldn't need code for habitable spaces.
So the current top plate height, I'm sorry, you said is
5'11".
Okay,
From
thank you.
finished, second floor, finished floor. 5'11".
And you're working with an existing second floor finished floor height, or?
We are not, it was just, that was my method of trying to reduce or minimize the appearance of the second story.
And what is the proposed, like floor to floor of the, like lower floor to? second floor?
The ceiling, the clear height ceiling is 10 feet, just 11 foot 4 inches. I believe we've got about 14 inches of floor framing, so 10-foot ceiling heights at the first floor.
Okay, thank you. So no more commissioner
All right.
questions? Okay, so we have a number of public comments, so just to confirm, I should have all the public comment and then the applicant rebuttal. I don't do them one.
That's
correct. Okay. So I'm just going to go through these in no particular order. And before I go into this, do we have any public comment also in the Zoom audience?
There are no raised, there's no raised hands on this.
Okay, great. Okay, well, I would like to start with Bob McLean.
And so,
Should we give you guys space here?
Yes.
Okay.
and so is it 3 minutes? Okay, let me do, I'll give you 1 second. I'll put your hands on the screen.
I just wondered. Okay, so you have 3 minutes, so please go ahead.
Okay, Bob McLean, live on top of the court, 2 doors down, I've lived in Lafayette for 14 years. I'm a home builder. I've been building single family homes here in Lafayette for about 10 years. I've had a couple of them go through discretionary review, and I think a couple of you were probably on here on my last project through. I submitted 2 sets of comments, one before the original staff report came out, and I'm actually kind of glad to see that those conditions and my suggestions kind of line up. So I hope to some degree I'm preaching to the choir tonight. Neighbors want to do a 2-story, 4,000 square foot house. That's all fine. I'm not opposed to that. When you come around the corner onto the court, it's the first house you see. It's going to be, the house that you're going to see. So it needs to has to look good. It has to have some good curb appeal. So, it'd be nice if the commission, has applies the same, design review standards that typically have been done. Stepping back a second story is good. The front porch makes it look better, but it's not a substitute for stepping back. Reducing the roof pitch. I mean, the only thing that I found close to a 10 and 12 nearby is the Lutheran church over here, and that's quite a ways away from top of court. Actually, and it's visible from the trail too. If you walk up and down, you can see it, and bringing it down. I mean, it's a distance away, but it'll be nicer to not see it as much from the trail. Hasn't been really mentioned much, but colors, material, articulation, I'm just kind of curious to see if, commission has anything to say on that. Landscaping, suggestion is to put a tree on the front left side of the house. I'm gonna suggest that maybe put one in the front right too. Just because the renderings show stuff that's not there. And so having something on the right, I think would be a reasonable thing too. I was gonna suggest that, since the changes recommended are pretty significant, to come back to the full DRC, but it sounds like that's been mentioned too. Gosh, what else? I guess that's it. So, thank you.
Thank you. The next comment will be from Pat Wood, please.
My name is Pat Wood. I live at 26 Topper Court. And I've lived there for 59 years. And our house is about 2,400 square feet, and we raised 5 children in it. They became very close. But anyway, my first impression was with the house was I was happy to see something new go up. But when the story poles came up, it scared the heck out of me, because when I looked out my 3-bedroom windows in the front of the house, all I saw were flags going, and looking above them, I saw nothing but maybe sky, where before I saw the hill across from my home and the trees, and I won't see them anymore. First of all, I feel the house is too big for the neighborhood. It's out of proportion. And when I look out, when I open my front door, I look directly into their front of their house, the front door area. Because we share the driveway. The property line goes right down the middle, and half of it is their property and the other half is mine, which gives the flag property access to their house. But so besides the loss of view, I'm going to be looking out at walls and roof, and it's going to be pretty claustrophobic. So it's going to be pretty hard to look at something after being there for 59 years.
Thank you. Next, we have Nathan Hayes. I apologize if I mispronounced your name.
My name is Nathan Hazy. I live at 32 Topper Court, which is the flag lot in the back. There's an easement against both properties to have access back there. I have a specific request about the upcoming work that the committee will do, or the work study will do, is addresses this issue of what is comparable. And in the report, there's a reference to houses that are on Topper Lane. They are like what's being proposed here. Those houses used to be an old farm and sheds. They came in, they weren't really offending anybody by the nature they had, and they're really unrelated. And so I would prefer that the very first design guideline in the Lafayette design guidelines is do's and don'ts. A bunch of pictures. You recall this? Yes, right. The first do's and don'ts is in figure drawings K and L. Don't do that. In other words, you have a bunch of houses like this, that's good, and you can have very, but then putting one very large house in the middle of this, no. And I think that's the right reference, whether there's a church nearby that has pitched roofs like this, or something up in Topper Lane, which doesn't even really represent our neighborhood. In the work that's done on amending or helping out with the new design, that we stay within our neighborhood rather than external references that aren't called out in the planning guideline. At least as I read it, I'm not a professional. I got a little bit of time. The other part is in your drawing of the view from the south, there was sketched out some, kind of a cloud greenery. And right now there's a driveway there. I got to get out of the house. I have to be actually able to leave. So they're going to remove, they're going to remove the covered driveway area. I imagine it's going to still be used for parking, but there's some attention to what it's going to look like from Pat's place and from my place. Is right now there's really nothing. There's just a very big building and there's no screening. And I'm not sure how that can be done. I'm not an expert in that, but it shouldn't be pictured like there's screening, because I don't think there's none now. And I don't imagine how they're going to do that and have side parking continue. But we welcome these neighbors in our neighborhood. Okay, there's, I hope, a sense of wanting them there. Having this family come with kids is a real blessing to our neighborhood. And we've talked a lot with Dalen and Jennifer about the big surprise, which is that what everybody went out, oh my God, look at this. And there's my time. Anyway, thank you for your time.
Thank you. The next neighbor to speak is Jim Ford.
Can we bring up the picture that had the flags that show the what do you call the flags? Yeah. I don't live on top of Court. My driveway does, but I don't. I live on School Street, sort of. I live at 3449 School Street, which is kind of a very odd address. But my driveway outlets on the top of Court, and my mailbox happens to be right at the end of top of Court. And my wife mentioned to me that there was flags on this house in terms of what it was going to look like. And so I walked down and got the mail and then said, oh, I'm going to look at this. And I turned around and frankly, I was startled with what I saw. I kind of felt like I had just walked into Disneyland. I'm walking up Main Street and I just saw Cinderella's castle at the end of the road. It stands so much higher than the other houses. And the flags you see there where the trees are kind of blocked, going to be blocked there. We're looking at that in relation to, there's nothing, the only other two-story house and on top of Court is downhill where you don't even know there's a two-story house down there. This will be the center point of top of Court. And every cul-de-sac that I've seen, I've lived in Lafayette for 35 years. When we bought our house on School Street, it consisted of 1,800 square foot. It had one bathroom and we raised 3 kids there. And now they all have kids of their own. We did add on, but we didn't add a second story. We were lucky enough to have a big enough property to add on without going up. So I understand it's nice to have a lot of space when you have kids, but I think somebody said that if you only have one bathroom, you really get to know everyone really well. And that's what we have. So it is good to hear that there's some design considerations in terms of how to mitigate this. I did go through the design review document, pages 15, 16, 17, and 18, pretty well addresses this circumstance. But there are things talking about setbacks, and it looks like to me that this house had a remodel and added a second story sometime in the distant past. They kind of met the guidelines because it's off to one side and it went toward the back and nobody cared. But we're basically tearing down this house and building something that really, as Graham mentioned, is a don't according to the current standards, and will change the complete complexion
of the houses on Tupper Court.
Thank you. Next, I have Robert Goldberg.
I'm Robert Goldberg. I live at 869 McKellen Way in Lafayette. Our home is directly behind the property. We are due east. Our property has full exposure to the entire length of the proposed house and the full unmitigated height, including all the windows up 2 stories facing back towards our house. We've lived in Lafayette for 23 years. We bought our house this month in 2000, moved in a few months later. We have fully enjoyed and love Lafayette. We have raised our son here. We went to Lafayette Elementary, Burton Valley, Stanley, Campo Window. We love and have loved the sunlight, the afternoon sunlight, the views of the hills to the west, the sunsets to the west, and the privacy that we have enjoyed that will go away, that our home has afforded us for 23 years. We first learned of this project in February, just before the originally scheduled meeting of this commission, when the story polls went up on a Saturday. It was like, what the heck? We knew nothing about it. A Tupper Court neighbor that I saw on the trail told me about it. That's the only way we've ever known about it, except talking to Anna, who was very kind and filled me in on the details. Our neighbors that share the fence line have never reached out to us at any time whatsoever. They've never notified us. They never sent the design team to us. They've never talked to us about our concerns that I'll detail in a minute. By the way, I put in a very detailed public comment that should be in your packet that referenced various pages and figures in your design guidelines, as well as photographs. The only visit that Mr. Burleson has made to our property was after several limbs came off one of his trees, and I asked him to come move them. That was the end of December after that windstorm. At that time, his only question for me was, what was my pool service, as opposed to asking me about the design of his home. The photos I submitted clearly show that this high 2-story house that has high 1st story and then high 2nd story is going to totally block our afternoon sun, our sunset, and our hill views. Those are views that should be taken into consideration per the guidelines. It also has windows that will look straight into our house, primary bedroom suite, and our 2nd bedroom. So for reasons of solar shading, loss of important views, loss of privacy in our bedrooms, and compatibility, as you've heard from the neighbors directly on Tupper Court, I ask you to continue this application until which time that all of my concerns and my neighbors' concerns are addressed. Thank you.
Thank you. And I have one more speaker in the room who has requested to speak, and that is Sandy Goldberg.
Hi, thank you for listening and hearing our concerns. Besides what my husband said, which I agree to, and I signed the letter that we both wrote and pictures that we submitted, my major concerns are its mass and its height. I feel it's too tall for the lot, too tall for the neighborhood. It's going to overpower all the homes that are there. And frankly, if the first floor is planned to be 10 to 12 feet ceilings, why can't that be 8? That could bring everything down. But because of the height, it also affects our privacy, which is another big concern that I have. As my husband mentioned, the whole backside of their house will have windows on the 2nd floor as well as on the bottom that they currently have on the bottom. But the 2nd floor will look into our primary bedroom suite and our secondary bedroom suite. We're disappointed that the staff didn't consider the impact that this would have. They mentioned vegetation as a screen, which is true. There is vegetation, but Unfortunately, the vegetation that is there currently, the shrubs are on our property and they're within 10 feet of our house. And according to CAL FIRE and FireWise, which I'm on a FireWise as a leader in the community, those need to come out. You're not supposed to have any vegetation within 10 feet of your house. And then the other screen, which are tree trunks with big crowns at the top of them, are trees that are, many are diseased. We took out 3 or 4 this last summer, and they're not long for this world. So I don't feel like there'll be any screen once the shrubs need to come out. So add more trees to the back. I hear trees in the front, and there needs to be some more screening in the back. And then light pollution. We've had experience with the neighbors who, since they moved in, the applicants seem to keep lights on late into the night, sometimes all night, inside of their house, outside of their house. They have string lights outside. And we've tolerated it because it's on the bottom floor of their house, and we just pull our blackouts and deal with it. But I do fear that having a second floor with lots of windows that are directly across from our primary suite and secondary suite, that the light will be pouring in to those rooms, and light pollution and night light will be gone. So I do ask you to reconsider approving this application. Thank you.
Thank you. Sonia, are there any more public comments in the Zoom?
There are no hands raised for this item.
Okay, thank you. So the applicant can now have a rebuttal to the comments from the neighborhood.
Sure.
I'm Jennifer. I think I've met most of you. First and foremost, I'm not in disagreement with many of the comments that have been shared with us. We've spoken to many of our neighbors proactively to get the feedback. We've spoken to Bob with his guidance, also decided to move forward with this hearing, just to make sure we can keep the process going. My ask is that I think everyone here is confused about some of the guidelines, right? They're general guidelines. What we're asking for is give us the specific feedback so that us as homeowners and our neighbors can know specifically what needs to be changed and how to move forward in a quickly and efficient manner. What I want to address right now is what I feel are, and I want to do in the public forum, because I feel like there have been neighbors who have publicly attacked my husband and our character. First and foremost, we have proactively reached out to all of the neighbors on our court because you have been so welcoming and so inclusive. We specifically did not reach out to certain neighbors because of the counsel of our neighbors, who have said that certain neighbors, it does not matter what you would do, it'll be a waste of time. So it's on my bad that we didn't do that. That being said, I want to apologize for the neighbors who are here that we have not spoken to in person to share our plans, because that was not our intent. We moved to Lafayette because it is inclusive, it's welcoming, it's family oriented, and it's all the things that's why we're here. I'm sure all of you guys are here for that exact same reason. And us in no means wanted to disrupt any of that. But we are surprised at some of the comments that came up via email that are, I would say, uncharacteristic of what Lafayette is supposed to represent. Some of the comments, and I will say this, it's not design related, but it's personal attacks against our family. That we are a nice enough family, that our home is adequate enough for their needs is not the type of language that I support living in Lafayette, and I would expect better from all of our neighbors. Thank you for this time. It's not specific to the design, but it is specific since this is a public forum, and some of the comments that have been shared have been very hurtful to me and my husband. And I'm doing my best to shield my children from this type of environment. So thank you for your time.
Thank you. Commissioners, is there someone who would like to start with a comment?
Questions to the applicant?
Oh, are there any questions? Sorry, do you have additional questions?
No, all right, go ahead.
I tend to agree with what the staff recommendations are. Is that, And there's a number of ways of doing it. I'm not precluding you having the pitch that you want, but, you know, change the plate height to 8 feet on the ground floor. And by the way, you'll save your PG&E bill quite a bit. Because I have a higher ceiling and all I'm doing is heating the ceiling. And I think there's, you know, I agree that the residential guidelines, you know, many of the aspects were brought up or met partially by what the design was, but it isn't in character necessarily with the neighborhood. And that's one of the characteristics that we do look at. So I think that Mr. McLean brought out very good comments in his letters. I think that if you look at those carefully and reflect on those, I think the changes, the additional tree, the change in height. Also, when you come back, it would be nice to see a sectional view of from the south facade, what is looking at the Goldbergs, what their view is back and forth, you know, what's shielding or not shielding, whether the window sill heights need to be changed or anything like that. Color wise, I have no problem with it. I mean, there's very many nice aspects of this design, you know, it just is that unfortunately it needs to be tweaked for the neighborhood. That's how I see it.
Thank you. I can go next. Thanks for the great presentation. It's, I think, you know, what you've shown us is a very coherent design. You showed us some inspirational images that informed your design. And what I would offer is that the historical context that you looked at is not the same as the neighborhood context. I think this is consistent with one of the comments we heard. I mean, this is a street with low-slung ranch houses from the 50s or 60s. And we have I would say a nicely designed traditional home that in comparison has an imposing feel. You've got twin gables facing the street symmetrically, which is a very formal, imposing and almost monumental kind of an aesthetic compared to the kind of quieter, low ranch houses that are surrounding it. You know, so I mean, I could say I agree with the staff recommendations, most of them, to reduce the roof pitch and look at doing things to reduce the impact facing the street and to reduce that imposing character. But I'm not sure just any one of those recommendations on their own is going to give us the level of coherence that I'm sure you're after in the design. I mean, this is a coherent design that would look nice on a street of older traditional homes, but feels kind of out of place here. I support building 2 stories. How can it be done to minimize impact on your neighbors? I mean, it's important to think about. I think a 10-foot plate height seems like a lot. I would like to see reduce that. I understand the comment about your upper story plate height and, you know, that if you lower the roof, you need to raise that to get your volume. It's a balance, but I think looking at an aesthetic that feels more comfortable with your neighbors, expressing a little more horizontality, even and that can be done as part of a setback at facing the street, I think would make things more coherent with your neighbors. I do think we need to see better screening at the rear property line, and I agree with Glenn's comment that seeing a site section through there to understand sight lines and privacy and view would be very helpful. I would like to see you get your dream house. I'd like to see it look a little more comfortable in this neighborhood. Thank you.
Yeah. And first of all, it's good to see everyone together now like this. So one thing is seeing faces helps to get over that COVID time that we were all isolated. So it's good to hear all the opinions and voices. I do want to say to Ms. Nip and Mr. Bruson, thank you for being here today and trying to make your dream come true in our community. At the same time, trying to, and I think you articulated in both of your speeches about how you want to work with your neighborhood and the community. In this project, as it is very sensitive, as you see, and you want to be a good neighbor, and obviously the neighborhood, the community folks all want you to be there, it looks like. So let's make this happen, right? So how do we make it happen? You're gonna have to work closely to be sensitive about all the factors that I think everyone laid out tonight and see where it goes. And for me, obviously, we can go right to the design guidelines and the staff report. I think that's a good starting point, because we don't give favors here. We don't give any favors, right? We have to follow those, it's like the Bible, but of course, it's kind of abstract sometimes. And you go like one interpretation is another interpretation, boom, 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 right? But we try to work together to communicate. And again, I guess you could agree to disagree once in a while, but we respect each other, that we tried our best to make that happen. So in this case, it's so sensitive, it requires look at outreach, more sensitive than a normal project, because your aspirations are very encouraging. It's a dream. And in order to achieve that, you're gonna have to be even more sensitive, I think, to take care of what you want to do. Two-story buildings, we've had two-story buildings in our neighborhood, in our community, right? It's about how you really definitely handle the adjacent neighbors around you. So I think the tools, communication tools, metrics or documentation is very important. So do what Glenn and Commissioner Gray talked about, do more of those kind of documents so that you really demonstrate, not talk, but show it that the sight lines are not getting into your bedrooms or, these kind of issues, right? So I would agree with the commissioners here. We encourage you, please stay in our Lafayette community. I think you guys are happy here, and we are happy that we have a very inclusive community here. So going back, facts, cross-section through the sites that Glenn and Commissioner Gray talked about. More contextual documentation, really show where the windows are of the neighborhood properties, and try to do your best to show where the vertical control points are. I'm talking about topography. Try your best to get that in a very clear, precise way. So it's not just talk and abstract, but data is there, right? To show that it's working or not working, so we can make that happen together. So I think it's those documents that would help. So today, I don't think we're going to be giving you a clear direction to this is it. I think you have to come back with additional efforts collectively from all the neighbors that surround you to collect that, try to be sensitive about each one of those criteria and issues. And I think the neighbors would really appreciate the attempt to have tried it and come close to resolving it, or maybe there might be still some tweaking we have to do afterwards. So, sorry about that. I should tell you, I'm not, one of those other kind of politicians or anything, but going back, I think this is a very nice project. If we could be sensitized to all those issues, sightlines, privacy, massing, there's all kinds of ways. You have a very talented architect who articulate very well about it. Different ways to understand traditions and history and normative tradition looks like, not the relativistic tradition. So you can take that on, but this side, you have to break that style and stylistic norm and say, what is the characteristics of this neighborhood? Not about the general Lafayette City, but about this cul-de-sac, and try to take means and elements out of that and articulate to beautiful architecture I think your architect could do for you. All right, that's it.
Thank you, Eugene. So I will sort of wrap it up and summarize. I think all of the commissioners have been fairly consistent with their comments. I think there's pretty clear support for a new, larger home on the site. I think none of us have any big concerns with doing a two-story building or with doing a building more or less of the area that you're talking about it. The things that I would really highlight are to look more closely at the very immediate context and to reference more what might be a horizontality rather than a verticality. I understand that it's overly simplistic for us just to say, change the roof pitch and push it back. Any glance at the plan shows that you can't just move that front wall back. You have to make changes. So I understand it's never quite as simple as a couple of conditions of approval. So that's why I think we would ask you to further develop the design consistent with what we're talking about today, and that we would see it again at a future hearing. And just hewing more closely to the Lafayette design guidelines, to the design language of the neighboring buildings. That doesn't mean you need to look like the neighboring buildings, but more understand the scale and the general formal language of the neighborhood. So I think that would lead us more to an approval. One of the things that I think has been articulated a couple times is maybe lowering the top plate height of the lower floor. You don't necessarily have to go to 8 feet. I know some people like higher ceilings, but there might be a number of ways to play with how you're able to achieve something that's less imposing on that site. So again, I do support the 2-story, no big aversion to a larger home. I can see how someone might need that. Our lifestyles have changed over the decades. So we look forward to seeing how the design continues to develop. I want to thank everyone for the comments here. I think it really helps the neighborhood understand all the different perspectives and needs and concerns, and that will all contribute to a project we look forward to approving in the future. Thank you. Thank you. Oh, and so we need a motion.
I'll make a motion for continuance, meeting basically the staff recommendations.
Do I have a second?
I would qualify that if I might, meeting the intent of the staff recommendations, but maybe not specifically. The staff recommendations. I think the design needs to be reconsidered as a whole. So-
I agree. With the flexibility.
So who's seconding?
I'll second.
Okay, and so now we take it to a vote. John?
Aye.
Kristen is aye.
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 Okay, is that clear as a motion?
Yes.
Okay, thank you, everyone. We appreciate all the comments and thoughtfulness.
Yeah,
It will be renoticed.
Publicly noticed.
So the design team will have some time to develop it and we'll work with the planning staff. So there will be renoticed.
Do they need?
Yeah.
I mean,
Oh.
do they have a specific date that?
When we be ready to receive
Yeah,
it.
or you're not, you
I
think it
think
would
that
take
would
long?
be,
I don't know.
Probably need flexibility.
Would you prefer to set us a date and we work towards it?
You guys should.
I think it comes from you and how long it takes you to.
Come up with a new design.
Yeah.
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 A revision, it's not.
Refinement.
Yeah, I think it would be sort of in a 2 to 4 week range is what I'm assuming. And I don't think we need a date today.
Well, we could set a date 4 weeks out, and if they can't make it, then we give them a continuance.
Could April.
Let's do that so we can get that date.
Okay, so that would be April 10th.
Okay,
And we will put that in the meeting minutes that will be the target. But you obviously will have an opportunity to revise that as you develop it.
thank you.
Okay. I believe that covers everything with this item. Okay,
Thank you.
thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
So the next item on our agenda is another continued public hearing. This is DRO 1-22 Huang. It is a request for design review to demolish an existing home and construct a new 2-story home. And I believe, Anna, you will also be presenting this one.
Yes.
It will only get easier as we do it more.
Okay, so this project, as you had said, is ZR 1-22. This is located at 1224 Upper Happy Valley Road, which is just north of El Nido Ranch Road and south of Happy Valley Road. It is in the R20 zoning district and is not located in the Hillside Overlay District. The project proposes to demolish an existing 2-story residence and detached garage and replace it with a new 2-story residence and detached garage. The new residents will have upper and lower terraces or decks at the rear, as well as a covered outdoor living area above the garage. The building height is proposed to increase by approximately 5 feet, from 29'2" to 34'3". In order to construct the additions and proposed driveway, 7 non-protected trees are labeled for removal. And in addition to patios, pathways, retaining walls, and a future pool as a deferred submittal, in the rear yard, a recreation court is also proposed, but was not labeled on the plans. And at this time, the applicant has not confirmed whether the recreation court is intended to be a deferred submittal. If not, if it is part of this package, and approval of the land use permit one will go along with that. So the existing building and garage footprints here are outlined in yellow, with the existing pool outlined in blue for reference. Gray arrows at the left-hand side of the screen show locations of both driveway entries. So there are 2 driveway entries here, which are not currently connected to each other. The site plan shows the 7 trees marked with an X for removal, and the trees shown with the gray boxes indicates trees that will be retained and will be protected during construction. So the proposed plan shows the enlarged building footprint again outlined in yellow, as well as the future pool for blue, just for reference only. The pool is intended to be submitted in the future as a deferred submittal. So the recreation court, which is outlined in green in the upper right-hand corner of the image, was not labeled on this site plan, but it was later identified on sheet L10 in the landscape details. So that would again require the approval of land use permit if that is to stay in the proposal. The residence has elements of English Manor architect. It proposes a combination of tan colored stucco and stone. And in general, these colors and the design chosen are consistent with other homes in the vicinity. There is a variety of architectural design elements in the neighborhood. Though the steep roof pitch and overall height do contribute to massing, especially when viewed from the side or from behind. So when viewed from the street, most of the lower story is not visible as the lot slopes down toward the rear property line. And the second floor above the garage is stepped back as well. So this does prevent the tall building from appearing too tall or massive when viewed from the street. But you do see it when entering from the driveway above that garage, that section there. When viewed from the rear, the terraces and other architectural features do offer some visual and shadow relief, though the building's massing is much more pronounced due to the tall, overall tall building and steep roof pitch. The large staircase behind the garage as well. Can you pull my screen further out? Thank you, sorry. Yes. Yes. Sorry, I wanted to show that at the bottom left-hand corner, the staircase behind the garage adds some bulk to that rear side of the building there as well. So low profile buildings are encouraged in the residential design guidelines, and while viewed from the street, the profile does not appear very massive. Staff recommendation is to kind of lower the overall height and appearance of the building. And staff also recommends stepping back the second story at the primary bedroom, which is at the right on the second floor in this image. I will show another view in a moment to pull back some of that massing. So this is a clearer view of that primary bedroom area that is recommended to be pulled back a little bit. So when viewed, this is the view from the north, and there are potential visual and privacy impacts from that increased height and the addition of windows on this property line. So to mitigate the privacy and visual impacts to the northern neighbors, the staff recommendation is to raise the sill height on second story windows, step back the second story at the primary bedroom outlined in yellow, and to add visual interest and additional shadow relief. Extending the small section of standing metal beam roofing at the first floor to create essentially a pent roof along the side of the house. So these changes combined with the existing and proposed landscaping along the side property line would serve to mitigate some of those privacy and visual impacts. And then when viewed from the south, the other property line, the other side property line, there is less privacy concern from second story windows due to the overall distance between properties and the fact that these second story windows here are stepped back. That's actually behind the garage. And the building mass does become more apparent due to the blank garage wall shown here. So shrubs are proposed along the southern property line, but larger trees along that property line would provide additional screening if they can be accommodated with the large parking pad that is proposed. So second driveways are typically not permitted in Lafayette, though this property already has a second driveway near the northern property line shown in yellow. This is next to the proposed relocation of the driveway entry. So the project proposes to relocate that driveway entry and connect it with the main driveway entry at the southern property line to create a horseshoe shape. And based on comments by the city engineer and the city's landscape consultant, staff recommend performing a study to ensure adequate site distance along Upper Happy Valley Road before approving the relocation of the second driveway entry. Trees marked for removal on this site plan are shown with red X's. There are 7 non-protected trees labeled for removal. The project arborist recommended 4 additional trees to be removed, either due to their poor condition or proximity to the proposed grading activities of the rear yard. So these trees are outlined in green and they are all protected species. So staff recommends the applicant revise their proposed pathways and retaining wall locations to avoid encroaching in the drip lines of these protected trees whenever possible. If a protected tree is, if they do determine that they would like to remove any of these protected trees, then a tree permit would be required as part of this application. And the removal of the 2 fairly large cedar trees in the front of the residence to the left where the proposed driveway is located. That could have some significant visibility impacts from the street view, removing mature vegetation. So recommend updating the landscape plan to include larger native trees along the property frontage, which is detailed in the next slide here. So the trees that are proposed along the property frontage and in front of the residence, which are roughly outlined in green here, include fruitless olive, eastern redbud, Chinese pistache, semi-dwarf citrus, and crepe myrtle, among a wide variety of shrubs and grasses. So to provide more screening along Upper Happy Valley, staff recommendation is to plant larger trees, a mix of evergreen and deciduous, and more native species. This is based on recommendations provided by the city landscape consultant as well. And then the trees proposed along the side property lines, I had alluded to that earlier. So the trees proposed along the northern side property line, which is the left-hand side, there are existing mature trees there as well. But proposed trees include Pacific dogwood, fruitless olive, western redbud, crepe myrtle, and another Chinese pistache. So these trees, in addition to a large oak tree that will remain, provides screening along that property line. But additional trees along the right or southern property line would provide better screening, especially above that area outlined in green. Those are not trees, those are shrubs proposed. So accommodating trees there by reducing that overall driveway area would allow larger trees to be placed there. So civil plans for the project show that the total amount of impervious surface proposed is under 10,000 square feet, which is the threshold for requiring stormwater treatment facilities such as fire retention basins. However, the pool is excluded from these calculations because it will be submitted as a future deferred submittal. So the future pool should be considered in these calculations as it may push the total amount of impervious surface area over 10,000 square feet. And if so, the project will require installation of bioretention basins. Alternatively, a reduction in the impervious surface area elsewhere on the project could keep it below 10,000 square feet. So we received comments from referral agencies, including the city engineer, who recommended that before approving the relocation of the second driveway entry, a site study should be performed. That any portions of the driveway or pathway constructed within the right of way should be constructed of asphalt, not concrete. The recommendation to request a pathway easement to connect the existing pedestrian pathway along Upper Happy Valley Road. It stops at both property lines, so that would allow that connection for pedestrians. And again, the recommendation to revise the impervious surface calculations to include the pool if that pushes it over 10,000 square feet to add a bioretention basin. The city landscape consultant also provided a comment regarding the second driveway, not only with potential site distance issues, but he recommended overall reducing the surface area of the driveway because adding the horseshoe bend would add a lot of surface. So he recommended reducing the paving towards the southern property line to reduce the overall surface area and just accommodate more trees along that southern property line for screening. And again, his recommendation to consider planting the larger mix of evergreen and deciduous large native trees along the front property frontage. And finally, comments from the fire protection district were fairly straightforward. And the applicant has indicated that they are working on updating the plans to show the driveway and gates to meet the access code required. So staff received no public comment prior to this hearing or prior to staff report publication. And essentially, the request to the Design Review Commission is to review the following recommendations, provide additional recommendations to the applicant before continuing the item to a future hearing. Potentially April 10th, if more time is needed, that is okay. So the recap of my recommendations include, but are not limited to, the site distance study, considering whether or not the recreation court will be included in the plans and submitting an application for a land use permit if so. Submitting the responsive findings, providing revised impervious surface calculations and a revised grading plan, which shows the pathways and retaining walls not encroaching in protected tree root zones. A revised arborist report identifying the 7th tree proposed for removal. It's not identified in the arborist report. And then just incorporating the recommendations to reduce massing, overall height, add visual interest through steps like stepping back the second story, raising the second story windowsill heights to reduce privacy impacts, reducing the overall roof pitch or height, and adding larger native trees to the landscape plan. And that concludes my presentation. I'm available for questions, and I have a presentation that was sent to me by the applicants as well.
Commissioners, any questions?
Anna, terrific staff report. Wow, okay. Very thorough.
Any other questions?
No.
Yeah, I think we're ready for the applicant presentation.
Good evening, commissioners. It's good to see you in person after last few years. With me tonight are Ben and Samantha, the homeowners, and Dan Hill with Hunt Hale Jones, my collaborator on this project. And Anna, I want to thank you for all your help getting us to this point, and well-written staff report. I agree with that one. Thanks for putting the slides up. I think Mark gave you a heads up on my skills. I'm going to go through just a few bullet point items here, and I'll try to go through real quickly. Again, a project description: 2-story, 4-bedroom home with a 3-car garage. It's kind of a French country inspired design. Samantha and Ben were very clear on giving us inspirational pictures of the home that they wanted us to design for them. We think it's a characteristic of a lot of the homes in the Upper Happy Valley neighborhoods. And then per the staff report, planning staff has found the project to be in alignment with the city's general plan, and that it maintains the existing residential character of the existing residential neighborhood. Condition living area is 5,400 square feet, but as stated in the staff report, the main level is about 3,000, and we're really taking advantage of the space underneath that's given to us because of the slope of the site. It's a fairly large site, and I think that's appropriate for that. We have some outdoor living area, 400 square feet, and a 3-car garage. The house is positioned similar to the existing structure. You come down off that long driveway to the lower garage area, and then you have to hike up to the house. It's basically living on one level, but underneath that is some very tall crawl space. It's not conditioned space, but because of the slope of the site, it is there. The house is actually about 10 feet back from the street than the previous, plus or minus in some areas. The other thing we did, and there's a lot of comments about height and massing. If you've been to the existing house and you see it's a very difficult site that you come in on the one side and there's no access to the front door other than hiking up a pathway to get to the front door. So we just wanted to design the house to be more of a traditional design where the front door is facing the street, open that landscaping up to the street, making it more inviting and part of the existing neighborhood. Again, the site slopes down from the street, providing opportunities to minimize massing from the street. The proposed scheme provides greater than required setbacks, so that helps with privacy and saving existing trees. The existing home has 2 driveway access points, and that's something we're trying to take advantage of to bring guests to the front door. The south driveway access, we looked at bringing it further north, but working with the civil engineers, the percentage of slope becomes too great to meet the city standards, the fire department standards. So we really had to keep it pretty much in the same position as that existing is, to get fire access down to the parking area in front of the garage. And then coming from the other side, we pulled it down from the north to get more area there for screening and planting. Again, we think the parcel is a good size, and we're keeping lots of room around the perimeter. Again, massing the sloping side, again, significant allows for a significant program on the lower level, minimizing the building footprint. From a massing standpoint, the proposed home is largely a single story as viewed from the street. Couple little tweaks. The floor elevation of our design compared to the existing about +3 feet. Again, that was to really utilize that lower level a little more efficiently and to follow the contours. The 2-story appears above the garage level. Yeah, a little lower level is down from the street level. Upper steps back on the garage level to minimize scale.
Briefly, can you show it in a drawing? So
Yeah,
that we
sorry.
can trace all the thoughts you have in your head, and yeah, it's good, but we need to see how you're tracing it.
It's gonna take a lot more than 10 minutes for me to put. Huh? Yeah, that's the slide, I'm sorry. So basically, it's a one-story profile for the main body of the house, and then the garage is at the lower level with a outdoor room above that, where the only two-story profile is visible from the street. The front corner of that two-story section is about 70 feet back from the street. And it's purposely angled so that when you look at it, you're not looking at that mass straight on. It's kind of a glancing blow to it. The rear elevation is not highly visible to neighboring properties. And another point I started to make is the finished floor elevation is about 3 feet above the existing, but we're backfilling against that to create a bigger landscape area to the front of the house and to create that arrival. One of the things that we had to do was make the driveway 16 foot wide, which kind of threw me for a loop. But apparently that's Lafayette standards now, fireplace standards. Used to be able to do 12 foot on something like this. Because we don't anticipate the fire department having to use that loop. They would just drive down to the garage to do any activity. Again, the rear elevation is well articulated. It utilizes a single story balcony that creates a horizontal element, breaking the vertical mass, as well as Anna said, creating shadow lines. The north elevation, yes, that's kind of a step back from the rest of the house. And the reason for that was to preserve and save the large oak tree that's on the side there. The existing house is about maybe 3 or 4 feet away from that existing tree. So we've cut the house back an additional 8 feet or so to get distance from that. So it's really more efficient to just stack that side. And because we have plus 30 feet to the property line, we think rather than stepping and changing the structure of the house, we prefer to use landscaping to screen in addition to the existing oak tree. Let's keep it on. Yeah, this here is the side here. Again, massing and height. The highest ridge is dictated by a 5 and 12 pitch front to back. So we're already lowering that to a minimum roof pitch to set the overall height. There are basically 5 gable elements on the design to create the character of the French country, which usually utilizes steeper roof pitches. 2 of the gables face to the front, 2 to the rear, and then the one over the garage faces to the rear corner of the lot. The widest gable is 18 feet. If we went from a 10-12, say to an 8 and 12, on the front, it only makes about a 13, 15-inch difference, which is imperceptible. The same thing with the 18 foot widths. Again, a 9 foot run, it would only make an 18-inch difference. And we think that the steeper pitches really capture the character of the design that we're trying to achieve for Ben and Samantha. Again, the colors I think are earth tone and blend into the neighborhood well. I think there's a lot of comments. We asked if the landscape architect could be here, but I think overall Ben and Samantha are certainly willing to look at all the comments and address those issues, from the sport court to the amount of paving to the trees. We've talked about that, and we think those are things that we can certainly accomplish. So I'll stop there and open it up to questions, and Dan can jump in if he thinks of something I'm not thinking of.
Yeah, I have a question if I may.
Yeah.
I took a look at the site, and I only will look at project sites from the public road. I didn't walk around your land. So
You're more than welcome.
so I
Send a drone in.
I did bring my drone. I could not really tell to what degree. I mean, I know the site slopes down on the far side, and the house would then be up the hill from whatever's behind that. Can you see the neighboring properties? I mean, in particular, 1232 Upper Happy Valley looks pretty close.
There's an existing creek in the back of the property, and there's some mature trees there, so it's fairly private.
It's very
I think you can, and the distance between those homes is quite significant. So we feel that again, the two-story massing being to the rear is the appropriate place to have that massing.
Yeah, the site section that went only as far as the property line there, and I would like to understand the relationship to there's two homes behind, but 1232 is the closer one.
We don't see them at all, because if you pull up the slide that has the survey, the lot size, the second half of that, it's the creek and a lot of trees, and I don't think we're touching any of that. Not that one, it's the one that with the shape of the lot.
Like the context one?
I think it will be probably Anna, yours, the one that you had, it has the shape of the lot, which is a weird shape.
And in the context of the other lots?
Yes.
So we can stay there for just a moment. The house that I saw on the aerial is kind of at the upper right where the property line is skewed just a little this way. That's
Right, so-
fairly close there. You're saying it's pretty densely.
We do not see
trees.
a lot of trees.
We just never see it. They never see it.
Okay, thanks. That's the only question.
We can verify the distance, but it's a long way away.
Any other commissioner questions?
I was unclear what you were saying about the fire department. So they're not using that loop at all?
They don't need
They're just
to.
coming in and they're not even using it as
No, I
your
think-
back?
No, from the front from the street front, they'll have to reach the hose to the north side of the house. But they'll have to come down to the access their driveway in front of the garage area to get around the garage.
Okay, so are they asking you for backup?
You can go in 150 feet and back out to the upper half of the valley. We don't have.
So
to
they're
do a-
accepting that, a direct back
Right,
out on.
we don't
that
have to
valley.
have a hammerhead on site.
No hammerhead, okay.
Yeah, and again, the slopes get kind of wobbly down there too.
Okay.
Okay,
right.
thank you. So now we can open it up to public comment. I believe the only remaining public comment in the room are for the next project. Is there anyone in Zoom with a public comment?
I see no raised hands.
So I guess if there's no public comment, there's no need for a rebuttal. So then we can go to commissioner comments. Would anyone like to begin?
Well, I, like John, is you go out there and it's like, okay, what can I see or not see and without invading your property? And I found it to be very private. Okay, so many of the issues that were raised by staff about visibility, I just think the lot is big enough, the setbacks are big enough, the tree coverage is significant enough that I really didn't have much concern about the architectural design. So most of mine are landscape issues. Okay, so first of all, the city, I think in around December or January, did finally approve the environmental task force recommendations for water usage to do the calculations. I didn't see anything on there, okay? But looking at your plant schedule, okay, you got way too many plants, okay? I know you want to have a beautiful flowering yard all year long, but unlike today that's raining, we've gone through droughts and, so I think you need to seriously look at reducing the water usage, particularly because you also have a swimming pool. We usually, for sites that size, we look for the daily water use to be under 750 gallons per day. And I think right now, I would guess you're over 1,000, well over 1,000. Okay. I think some of it will have to change. You have a lot of low water usage plants. Some of them you'll just put a little more mulch area in, don't quite make them as dense. I think you have a lot of moderate water usage plants, azaleas and stuff like that. Most of those are going to have to be cranked down. Now, unlike most properties where you have a lot of oak trees where water sensitivity, you have less because Chinese pistachio, those things don't have that same concern. But you're gonna have to crank the water usage down. It's really high. I see it as being very high at this time. The one slide that was shown about the high was at the south elevation. So you see a lot, a downhill slope, and you see a lot of fixed stucco. Is it stucco finish there? Yeah, that one right there. I agree that the shrubs, I was trying to even see what shrub was on there, okay, on your landscape plan. And I may not have these right, but it was like rosemary or something. It's like, wow, you're not gonna be up there at all, okay? So I think I actually agree with the city that you should look at maybe some trees in that area that will conceal that and not have such a massive, I know it's not really viewed very much by outside, but it is, it is sort of a solid big mass, and we try not to have that. So, and then the last thing about the loop driveway, I'm sort of inclined not to want to have that. Okay, I mean, I guess ultimately it's the city's sightline study, but we normally don't have two entrances to a property. So unless you're going to subdivide the property, and that would help knock down some of your permeable surfaces. Because I agree with the city engineer that if we had a sports court, the pool and the size of house you have, and the driveway that is already there, you're over 10,000 square feet, and you're gonna have bioretention, and you're gonna have to show that on your landscape plan. That's all.
Thank you.
That was pretty robust there, Gwen. So my comment would be, Anna, your recommendation for the elevation, can you go to this screen?
Yeah, go up one
Go up
slide.
one slide that you had.
Oh, yeah,
Your recommendations.
the recommendation screen?
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah. But the elevation, the one that you showed just prior to this, the elevation where you are recommending a little bit more articulation, and that, that one right there. Yeah, the yellow area. Okay, so this is the backside, right? Right? And Gwen and
That's the left side.
left side.
Oak tree right here.
Okay, yeah, I see. Thank you. Thank you for letting us see that.
There's an oak tree there.
Yeah, I'm just trying to speculate, like, we try to encourage a further articulation of these facades. But if it's not seen and visible, it's not visible.
It's not visible at all.
Right?
Not at all.
Really, it's not.
I love your staff report, Anna. You're going like this. So that's what I would also say is that if it's not seen and, and you want to enjoy your property the way you need to, in the future, there's no prospect of another subdivision or anything on the backside, right?
It's a creek.
Right. Yeah, there's a creek there too. Yeah. So my comments are really staff report, very on spot, but like item like that Glenn brought up, I would not want to, force you to do more things like that. Okay, thank you. That's it.
Okay, John.
Okay, well, I also would like to compliment the staff report. The recommendations are really worth considering.
So good.
Which is not to say that I think necessarily you need to accommodate all of them. But they were very thoughtful.
Yeah.
Your response regarding the pitch, I agree that changing the pitch is not going to ultimately make a significant difference in the perception of the bulk of the house, and that it does contribute to the character you're after. This side elevation we see and also the rear elevation are a bit imposing, but they're private. I mean, they're good comments, but the fact that they're private, means that they're not potentially imposing on neighbors. So, I think it's good advice you're getting from Anna, but on the other hand, it would be for your benefit only. There are various technical comments in the report that I won't repeat. They're please do take those under consideration. They're very valid. Finally, regarding the fire department, I suspect you can do some amount of negotiation with them to explain to them where they would fight the fire from. I'd hate to even say that here. How they would bring a truck onto the site, that they might not need to use a driveway that goes toward the front door at all, and that could be downplayed, maybe reduce the amount of paving there. Like Glenn, I would rather not have it at all, but I understand that it's a formal approach to this house, and a formal arrival is one of the things you're after. And yeah, I worry more about the safety of driveways that might have a sightline issue from Upper Habitat Road. You know, I guess, I mean, I'm not sure we need to see it again, quite honestly. You know, I think that I don't think that anybody we've heard so far has significant objections to what we see. A little advice here or there, some technical comments that could be handled by staff. I think you've got a nice design. I think, you know, maybe you can fiddle with it a little bit, but I don't see any major changes needed.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm inclined to agree with that. I wouldn't change the roof slope. I think it's very consistent and clear with what the design language is. I don't think this needs more articulation either, both because I think it would start to be a little more diffuse rather than the more French country look. I also think it's not really visible. I think that minimizes the need. I don't feel like from an architectural standpoint, we need to see it again. It really feels much more like it's, you know, the driveway concerns with the sight lines, some of the landscape items that again could be staff report or staff review.
We could always go with plastic plants. Rubber plants.
Please don't.
Cut down on water usage.
They'll pull out.
I know.
Yeah, you have a beautiful site, and the other previous applicant, we don't need to compare, but you know, it's about neighbors, and you don't have that.
We don't have
concern
neighbors.
at all. So, yeah, we're very common.
So do we have a motion?
Yes,
So,
you got the landscape. one.
well, it has to come back on consent because we don't have a resolution written up. So if I resolution is that it come back on consent calendar in what, 2 weeks or? Yeah,
As soon
because
as
they,
staff,
as soon as, yeah, in 2 weeks'
Are you
time.
comfortable writing a
Staff has too much
resolution
work
that way?
already, so.
Got another item to bring back that date anyway, so, yeah. let's do
Okay,
it.
and that, you know, that they reevaluate staff recommendations to see what they can accommodate and make the changes in the landscape we can.
Yeah.
And if those changes are gonna take longer to resubmit, we can go to the next.
Yeah.
Well, I don't
Give them
think-
opportunity.
Well, I don't think we need to actually see the resubmittal of what
I
they're
agree.
doing, okay? Or the sightline report. I think it just is, the resolution would say if it, you know, unless they want to give up that driveway. Just have them, as part of the resolution is that, you know, subject to the review and approval of the city
Those
engineer.
agencies,
Yeah,
yeah, because it's not, they aren't design issues that are really under our purview.
and then like the landscaping is subject to staff review.
Yeah.
And the, you know.
Sounds good.
But great staff report.
Do I have a motion?
Okay, that's the motion.
Okay, I'll second that motion.
Okay, and then we'll have a vote.
Aye.
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 So all are in favor and the motion carries. So thank you. We look forward to.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And thanks for your service. Giving up your
Thank you
time
for
to
coming
do this.
tonight.
Thank you. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank
Thank you. Thanks for your time. Thanks.
So thank you. Okay. The next item on our agenda is a new public hearing. The project number is DR 8-21 and GR 3-21. Thornfeld. It's a request for design review and grading permit for them to move 228 cubic yards of earth for the construction of 1,945 square foot addition and 1 and 2 story addition. The address is One Pleasant Place, and Samina is back to the presentation.
Okay, I'll start sharing my screen. As Commissioner Seidel mentioned, that this is a design review and grading permit request for interior and exterior renovations, including garage and living area additions to an existing two-story residence at One Pleasant Place. The subject parcel is located south of the city's eastern boundary and directly east of the Pleasant Hill and Release Valley intersection. The property is accessed via a private Pleasant Place Street that serves the 1, 3, and 5 Pleasant Place residences. The subject parcel is about 0.75 acres, and it shares property lines with 4 neighboring properties, and all 4 properties sits sort of on a lower elevation. The existing residence is located on a naturally elevated pad on the property towards the northeast side, and the site topography is downslope towards the west and south side. The context map shows the location of the additions and the distance from the neighboring residences, and the blue line indicates the building area meeting the setback requirements of the R20 zoning district. Here are some pictures taken by staff after the story poles were being installed, and this picture shows is taken from the entrance of the Pleasant Hill Place, and this shows that the views are mostly blocked with the existing trees and the landscape berm along Pleasant Hill Road. The second picture is taken from the northeast side, showing the 3 Pleasant Place residents. And here is a picture taken from the intersection of Quan Code and Candy Code that shows that after the story poles were up, the structure would be visible from public vantage points. And here is a picture taken looking towards the south side that shows the existing vegetation, wood on wired fence. And this picture is looking towards the west with the story poles and existing palm trees. Moving to the site plan. The site plan shows, and this is the existing site plan. The proposed site plan shows the addition of 1,954 square feet of 1 and 2-story additions in the rear and side of the residence, with the conversion of about 450 square feet of unconditioned space on level 1 into conditioned living area, 160 square feet of replaced impervious surfaces, addition of 172 square feet, where the total net gain is about 8 square feet. And the project proposes 228 cubic yards of earth movement on level 1 for additions and new functional garage. The project complies with the general plan and zoning regulations as it meets the required setbacks and is lower than the maximum allowable height, proposing a ridge height of 27 feet, 2.5 inches. Here are the existing elevation drawings that shows the proposed additions and renovated facade, following the line of the existing residence and the farm house style residence with board and batten siding, composite shingles, and dark sky compliant lights. The section drawing below shows the addition in context of the neighborhood, where it shows that there is about a 2-story residence of about 24 feet tall, and that's the 3 Pleasant Place, with some existing screening provided by 2 oaks on this side. And then on this side, we have the less than 17 feet tall 1-story ranch style home on 1294 Quan Code. The palm trees shown on the side section are growing palm trees, and they are right now around 6 to 7 feet tall, but that's the approximate size. And zooming out, the colors and materials. The proposed colors are grays for wood. Excuse me. I'm trying to. Yeah, so the proposed colors is gray stucco for wood siding and exterior walls, white for the trims and the posts, and the project proposes to preserve the existing trees and landscape areas on the side. New landscaping includes 2 decks on level 1 and level 2 with the stairs leading to the level 2 deck. The changes from the previous submittal include removing the entry staircase from here and the extension of the entry patio to the possibility that it may encroach in the drip line of an existing mature oak tree in front of the main entrance along the east property line. Moving to the next slide. As of today, staff has received standard comments from 5 referral agencies. 4 public comments, where 3 letters in total were received from the neighbors at 1294 Candy Court and 1293 Quan Court, requesting design modifications in response to the massing, drainage, windows placement, decks location, and privacy impacts, and 2 support letters from neighbors in place. While the additions meet the setback and height requirements to fit better in the context, the increasing height from 24 feet 9 inches to 27 feet 2.5 inches, and the impact on the downslope neighbors, the tall structure would be visible from public vantage points and would also result in privacy and massing concern to the rear yard neighbors. Therefore, staff recommends exploring design changes to mitigate the massing and privacy impacts by reducing the height of the proposed roof, bringing it in line with the existing roof line, reducing the height of the elevated deck and connecting it with the level 1 outdoor open space area, maintaining the existing large setback and the landscape, and proposing immediate mature trees and landscape screening. This was not included in the staff report, but I would also recommend that the fences along the rear side can also be replaced to a good neighbor fence 6 foot tall, and proposing earthy mixed tone colors and downward facing exterior lights with shielded bulb source. With that, I conclude my presentation and request commissioners to provide feedback to the applicant. The staff is available if there are any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Samina. Do any commissioners have questions for Samina? Thank you. With that, we can move on to the applicant's presentation.
Samina, do you want to share the presentation I have?
Sure.
Otherwise, I'll need a cord. Okay, that would be great. Great. Hi, I'm Chris Folliers. I'm responsible for the design of the project. The owners are here, Gideon and Kim Thornfeld. I know one of the commissioners professionally, so I just want to make that known. So, hi, Chris, in case that's an issue at some point. I'm fine with all the comments you might have, by the way. So what's interesting is that the 2 projects you saw earlier referenced gabled houses, historic houses in Lafayette. This is one of those houses. And so the design intent is to maintain this gabled farmhouse aesthetic because that's what it was. So the house also didn't have a few things that modern features that most houses in the neighborhood have. It never had a garage. It didn't have a living room separate from a dining room, and it didn't have a master suite. And so the proposition introduces those 3 aspects in a series of additions towards the rear and towards the side yard setbacks. And as Samina noted in her presentation, With the additions, we still maintain a distance of 50 feet to the house the upper house on Pleasant Court, 3 Pleasant Place, and from 90 feet to 100 feet to the projects down the topography. Next slide, please. This is just a zoom in of the site plan, just to note what we just talked about. Next slide, please. Just referencing the survey with superimposed with the aerial. The site has a fair amount of mature planting, especially downward in this. There are some gaps, and part of the recommendations are to improve the landscape screening, the clients, and we're totally open to a couple well-placed trees that might close those gaps, those view gaps. Next slide. Samina went through this as well. This is a comparison of the existing and the lower site plan. I don't think we need to go further. So I would only note that where she outlined in her red outline earlier, proposed footprints, 2 of those areas are outdoor spaces. Towards the right on your screen is the raised deck off the master suite, and lower down towards the bottom of the screen is a below grade terrace that is off of a home office. Those are the 2 new outdoor areas. Next slide, please. Just to take you through a little bit of what we're trying to do inside. I know this is a planning review, but it reinforces the point. This, the main reason we're removing so much earth is to introduce a 2-car garage without introducing new footprint, new visual impact on the site. So we're hiding a 2-car garage under partly the existing house and partly the new wing to mitigate the impact of additional coverage on the lot. Next slide. The main level, all at one level. Can you scroll it up just a little bit more, please? Thank you. Shows in pink the extent of the new additions. Towards the right on the slide is the new master suite with its deck. Towards the bottom is what was kind of an entry giant mudroom, probably during the farm eras. It was quite large. That gets extended out into a family room. And then one of the bedrooms that was on that wing gets moved out towards the bottom of the screen as well. So that's the reason for the additions. Next slide, please. Just to show the section that the basement, which because of the slope turns into a second story momentarily during the garage. It's half sunk. That's where we're getting the garage and the home study. And above that is a 1-story extension of the family room with a slight gabling in the interior of the master suite. And next slide. That's the section. Oops, sorry. Can you scroll just the other section? Shows that section through the garage and the outdoor terrace office suite. And you can see a bit of the grade on the left to see that we're sinking that down. So the 2-story is never really expressed as a full 2-story to a neighbor. Next slide. Site sections, which show what Samina talked about. We also show another site section, which shows how the site slopes down. I will note here and in the elevations that in that farmhouse aesthetic, things were built over time. And we tried to maintain that idea that a new building is a new extension is thematically similar to what was before, but to try to push and pull and lower and up and raise a little bit to give it that, to maintain that more casual, actually less formal appearance of a farmhouse built over time. Next slide, please. The other site sections, that's from, you can imagine Pleasant Hill Road, but
there's screening and then the cul-de-sac and then the appearance to the cul-de-sac is mostly hidden, but if you could remove all the trees, you would see mostly these small gables and mid-sized gables that made up the original farmhouse. And in the back of the house, we're trying to replicate that with the porch feature being another echo of that small front. Our gables aren't as tall as that because we know that that's an issue of height. Next slide, please. Almost done. Mostly the landscaping is intact. We'll add some landscaping near the house. Next slide. Let's scroll through those. I think Samina went through all those images. And the elevations, as she noted, that trying to maintain the double gable. It was a double gable, and now we have a larger second gable in the back. We're changing the material, but unifying so to a vertical board and batten versus horizontal siding to maintain that casual look, to try to, again, mitigate a uniform formality with a more informal scheme. Next slide. And those are the existing below it. And please, next slide. We've got have it in a couple of minutes. The front, which you wouldn't see, the existing small gable, there was the dining room, and then the larger elements to either side. On the left is the existing kitchen. On the right, the lower one is the new family room. Next slide. And on the other side, again, that double gable is trying to maintain, is trying to be maintained.
Is this the side from Quad Court?
Yes, I believe so.
Is it the back side?
This is the west side, the side yard side. We can go back to the site plan in a second. Next slide. And I think this is the side that's facing, yeah, more of that you're getting the master suite buffered a little bit by this court, this porch, and then other elements of the house receding. Next slide. So with Samina's comments from last week, we also, in 1 minute, which I won't have time to, we did some quick studies to right now the gables are maintaining the same pitch. I won't have time to show those, but we're completely willing to lower the gable of the addition so that the height matches the existing. And it will bring the gable down to a 6 and 12 pitch, one of her suggestions, versus right now it's at almost 7 and 12. We're also can consider a darker base with a lighter trim to, again, mitigate those. And I have some studies we did, basically, I got the comments Thursday, we did the studies Friday, the clients liked them. We're very much willing to accentuate through color and lowering the roof pitches by, we can get about 11 inches down and still maintain the character. Anything more than that starts to change the character of the addition, and it starts to look like, a Berkeley bungalow next to a farmhouse, and it didn't look good. All right, that's it. I don't have any more time. Thank you.
Any commissioner questions for the applicant?
Yeah.
Don't go yet.
Can you go back to the sections and walk me through the two properties that we've gotten comments on, Quad Court and Candy Lane, whatever?
There'll be the site sections.
Yeah, so that I know.
Can I just have 1 second so I can share my screen on Zoom so that.
Okay.
Yeah.
And if you can describe where the windows line up or whatever, because I don't, they're not on the sections, but.
So can you stop sharing your screen?
No, she's not sharing. You're just saying,
Yeah, probably back about 6 sheets. Maybe more than 6 sheets. Actually, can you scroll down to the images? Scroll down one more time. One more. That one. That is really small, but I think that's one of the gaps where you can actually see the existing house and the double gable in an existing form. And in some ways, we're increasing that impact. It's
I
this-
can't read that from this distance.
Yeah,
What,
it's-
what?
That's the
house is
view
that?
from 1294 Canton Court.
No, I know that's the existing house. That's a view from who's?
From 1294 Canton. It's still on the applicant's property,
And roughly, what's the distance there?
90 feet.
90 feet.
Yeah, 95.
From where you're standing with the camera?
Correct.
Is 90 feet, okay.
So that is one of the main gaps in the foliage.
Okay.
Throughout the site. And so that's the one where I think the applicants are very willing to do some strategic planting to buffer that view.
And how much leeway do you have for planting in there?
Well, with Semina, there's the full distance, right? That's pretty much from the fence
Oh,
line.
that's your 90 feet or?
Yeah, that picture's taken from
Oh,
the applicant's property.
Oh, okay.
So that's still on their property.
Oh, I meant, okay. I was wondering what the distance was from the adjacent house to that point.
Oh, to their house, we'd have to go to the site plan.
Yeah, let's go back to.
Yeah, I don't.
I mean, roughly, just, is it
It-
300 feet? Is it?
No, it's another probably typical rear yard distance, so another 50 feet or so.
Okay, so,
Look at a 1.4.
so
Yeah,
90 and 50, 140.
more or less, and we could, from the very first image, Semina had that and I had that.
Yeah, so in the upper section, I think we're talking about the subject house and the house to the right.
No, let me rephrase that, I think I misspoke, because it's 90 feet from the addition from house to house.
Yeah, that's
That's
what I'm
right,
seeing. now.
yeah, so that I misspoke on that one. So that's about 90 feet,
Okay,
not to the property line, I misspoke.
okay. So I got it. Okay. And that was Candy, and Quant, can you pull that up for me so I can see what that,
Yeah, is
either the
that,
photograph again, or what, was Quant the one with the dead tree, or which one?
there's an image from Quant that if we go back to the images and zoom in, we can get to there is one image where you can see, scroll down a little, one more page, I believe. I believe it's that series. You can zoom in on those. It might be the next one. No, it's back to that. So those are similar angles, but those are closer to the house. We were trying to take pictures of the house at that point. Sanctuary. But if you scroll up one image, there's an image there, I believe. No, that's facing down. Can you go up one more? I don't seem to have one, maybe up one more. No, I don't seem to have it. From the other, you can see the roof of the existing, but you can't see the building. So as the building grows in that direction, you might be able to begin to see some of the upper, the master suite.
Okay,
I don't have that image, but it's in your set.
okay.
You have a question?
I do, if you're done, Glenn.
Yeah, I'm done.
There is a small rear deck. And I was trying to understand the relationship of that deck to the nearest neighbor and any potential privacy concerns there. I couldn't find a section, maybe there is one. You know what I'm talking about?
The one off the master, is that the one?
Yeah, the deck off the master suite.
It sounded like all you see is the roof.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah,
that
there-
deck, if we had a section cut this way, what would we,
Let's
is
see
there
if
an
we have-
adjacent property?
Let's see if we have that in there. Can you go? Let's see, I think, yeah, there it is.
There, okay.
There it is. So if I can go towards that. It's a little muddy. That deck you're talking about.
Okay, that's-
is right in here.
And
And
so
that's on Pleasant Place still, so that's next door. And these are the downhill lots that on the courts.
So I guess my question is there a sightline issue between that deck and the house down the hill, which would be at the far right of that section? And that would be.
That's the one that
1293.
in the existing images from the edge of the applicant's property, you can see the top of the roof. So as it pushes forward, you'll see the roof, you'll definitely see the roof of the porch. And we'd have to kind of measure it and look back at the planting to see if we'd actually see the deck, because there is fence line planting on that site. You guys will know better on how tall that is.
Are there any windows there on the right side? That's,
Of the existing house?
yeah, facing toward the deck. That you could see.
On the
from deck,
proposal?
maybe. Yeah, no, that
Well, they're
existing.
behind, they're behind the roof of the deck. or
Oh,
the-
okay.
Yeah.
They're behind that roof. They're under the roof.
Overhang,
Yeah, over that.
deep overhang.
Yeah.
But still, there could be some daylight, I mean, a night skylight, type of things that might come in both ways. I don't know, I just like to know what I'm looking at on the right side.
Yeah, we don't.
Anyway,
we don't
that
have the neighbors'
answered
windows
my question.
up.
I can make comments when we get to that point.
Okay.
Okay, so no more questions?
No,
Okay, we will open it up to public comment. I have three public comments, and we will start with Deborah. We will start with Deborah Kaufman, please.
Thank you. Good evening. My name is Deborah Kaufman. I'm here to voice concerns about the visual and privacy impacts of the proposed addition at One Pleasant Place on my home at 1294 Candy Court, which shares a fence line and sits directly below it. I may have to speak quickly because I know I only have 3 minutes. I've also shared concerns. I shared the concerns made by the neighbors also at 1293 Quant Court, included in their letters, and I've submitted a letter of my own, but I just want to voice a few of my major concerns. The biggest impact is to our privacy based on the proposed height of the addition, which at 27 feet would room over our 1,800 square foot property. The addition on the south slope, which creates a 27-foot tall structure, which when viewed from the rear impacts our privacy. Although the applicant states the second-story roof would only result in a 2.5-foot increase in ridge height, this would create a large roof mass that the planner noted due to the size of the addition, the location on a naturally elevated pad, and the downslope in the rear. The second-story additions are quite visible and appear quite large from our home from looking at the story poles. And I think that the neighbors have better pictures than we've seen on what those story poles look like. They seem to show an increased height that looks like more than a 2.5-foot increase proposed. I know that the Design Review Commission conditions for this subdivision, which apply to this proposed addition, condition G9 states the commission desires designs that maintain the privacy of adjacent homes. And G10 states the commission will give foremost consideration to the privacy of surrounding homes, citing massing and elevations, and also minimize visual impacts when viewed from off-site. It also indicates proposed landscaping should provide screening of new structures from off-site. After seeing the story poles from our house and looking at the proposed landscaping, I do not think that the proposed design gives foremost consideration to the privacy of our home and to neighbors' homes. As was mentioned earlier, a lot of the very similar issues to Topper Court exist here. The neighborhood is really mostly low slung 50s and 60s homes, with the exception of 3 homes built on the hill on Pleasant Place. But the neighboring community are really those, largely single story homes that are probably 1,500 to 2,000 square feet. To protect our privacy, I'm requesting that the roof line be limited to one that's no higher than the current roof line. I'd ask that decking be limited to the ground level of the property without a second-story deck, and that other considerations be given to lowering the overall height and pitch of the property, and possibly lowering top plate and other considerations that you have mentioned for the Topper Court home. I don't see any, with the proposed, I'm out of time, but I was going to mention proposed landscaping. I don't see any tall landscaping proposed. And as I mentioned in my letter, the existing tall tree that is there is dying, so that will have an additional impact on the
Thank
view
you.
of the proposed property. Thanks.
Next, we'll have Benjamin Paul. Is it possible for you to go first, comments go back? Jennifer, yeah.
May I ask a question related to something
Yes.
the commenter said, and this is a question actually to the applicant based on one of Ms. Kaufman's comments. Comment regarding plate height. We didn't talk about that. Could you tell us what the proposed plate height is for the addition?
The plate height for the addition, I believe, is about 8'3", matching the existing.
Thank you.
No higher, no lower.
This is dimensioning the underside of the ceiling as being 8.7.5, but it says align with existing, so.
Yeah, could be. I can't remember that. Might be a different house I'm thinking of.
Right. Okay, is that
Possible to share the pictures from what I sent in, or at least from what Samina has? So you can, because there's a picture of our house that it's on there.
Yeah,
Sure. So if we could pull up Samina's staff report.
Are you sharing, or do you want me to share?
I can share my screen.
Well, then you say on court in her report, there's a picture of, it was like a third slide, I think. That was my like.
My slide or my staff report packet.
In your slide, it just, that's the quickest photo we could get of our backyard. There you go. Yeah, okay. So because that's there you go, that'd be great. That's what we see from our fence line. So there is, okay, great. Okay, great. All right, well, good evening. Thank you. Design Review Commission and staff. My husband, 3 kids, and I are 17-year residents of 1293 Quant Court. The story polls for One Pleasant Place went up on Friday, March 3rd. The same day we received a letter in the mail about this meeting. That was also the first time that we or any of our neighbors had ever heard of this project. We were not approached by the applicant. We have noticed a lot of inaccuracies in the project plans and have several concerns about the proposal. We share a fence line. That is exactly what we see from our fence line. There's nothing blocking our view. And the height of the new massive home can easily be seen throughout our backyard, which will eliminate our privacy. It can also be seen from the front of the house, neighboring homes, Pleasant Hill Road, Belize Valley Road, Quant and Candy Courts. The plans in the staff report state that the proposed roof height of the second story is only 2.5 feet, but as you can see from this photo, it's much more than 2.5 feet, at least according to the story poles. So either the story poles are wrong or something's going on. You can see from the photos that I've sent, as well as the photos the staff took about the increase in that it looks larger. The home is 2 times or more the size of most of the homes at Candy and Quant Court. Most of them, as my neighbor said, they're mostly 1,500 to 2,000 square feet. We are a family of 5 in our 2,000 square foot home. In addition to the height and the mass of the house, there's a second story deck proposed, which would be facing our backyard. So it would literally look right into our backyard from there. As you can see from the photos I sent you, standing in my backyard with the shared fence, there's no tall landscaping currently right now, except for 2 plum trees that lose their leaves most of the year. Contrary to the project application, as we've said, there's no privacy screens. There was one photo that's a bit misleading in the packet from the applicant. It's just one photo kind of showing a top level of our house. I tried to recreate it. I showed you, I wasn't able to, from our house at least. It also shows that our house is 27 feet high and our neighbors below us at 23 feet high, but we're at most 17 and she's about 14 high, so that's inaccurate. The visibility of the home and our loss of privacy seems to be in direct contradiction with the parameters put in place by the lot subdivision. As my neighbor already mentioned, because I'm running out of time, for G9 and also G10. So we're just asking to maintain our privacy and that of our home, the adjacent homes, and that if we could, if it does get reduced in height, if we could just see new story poles so we could get a sense of what it's going to look like. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Benjamin Paul.
And thanks for your attention tonight. I'm just going to continue with some of our concerns, mainly about the landscaping and the grading. So the permit's going to remove 228 cubic yards of earth. In the backyard of One Pleasant Place is currently, from what we see when we look over the fence, soil from prior home remodel and an attempt to flatten the backyard. So there's actually a little 4 to 5 foot retaining walls right behind our fence that raises their property up. That already contains a large volume of soil and material. And that retaining wall is the only thing that keeps it from sliding either into our home or even more so into the home on Candy Court. With the recent rains, the movement of both soil and water through the sandstone base layer, this area actually has very, very poor drainage, and it turns to kind of a muddy muck. And an example of this concern is that mud actually flowed into Quant Court when a culvert broke during the last storm. Greater volumes of water actually flow under and around our house. We have a French drain system, and a massive amount of water pours out of that, as well as spraying from under our neighbor's home across the street. So we'd like the commission to evaluate the plan a little more thoroughly and address our fears and concerns regarding grading, drainage, and mitigation of both erosion and soil movement. When I read the engineer's report, I didn't see anything regarding that, just mentioned that they can stabilize the ground underneath the home when they create essentially a basement. So even more of a concern actually is that plants don't grow in this area. 10 years ago, we planted oak trees and tried to create a screen. Nothing's really grown. It's really just very poor quality soil and sandstone. In summary, please reduce the height of the proposed home to no taller than the current highest point, which we're okay with. We're concerned about the second story deck overlooking both our and our neighbors' backyards. We're concerned about lighting because if trees get lit up and the home gets lit up, and that becomes essentially a floodlight. Consider window size and position so that, again, backyard privacy is not compromised. Please ensure a plan for drainage, grading, erosion, and so it's adequate so the surrounding homes don't suffer from a detrimental collapse or, in a storm when things start to change, liquefaction of the ground. And then we do appreciate that the builder would place a privacy fence, but would ask that they consider planting mature trees because things don't grow. The soil quality is very, very poor. And that's the end of my time. Thank you.
Thank you. And then the last comment is Beata Zaganowski.
Right, yes. Yeah. So I have a question. If you do have my husband's email, perhaps. I think you mentioned that you guys received, and there is a photo actually that is from the Quant Court that he has included. And I think Kristen
Was that in the staff report?
It was not.
Today, it came today, so we mentioned, I think Kristen mentioned.
6 o'clock. But I wasn't able to open it.
1292.
Yeah, I don't have that email.
From Greg Zagorowski.
And it was too late to get to us today.
Yeah. So I am, so thank you for letting me speak today. I am on the Quant Court, which is directly below this property. And I actually never met my neighbor, the Thornfeld family, even though our windows face for 20 years each other, and I always admired that property because it's a Quant original homestead. So I see it from my window of the kitchen, and I see it from the bedroom, and I was not aware suddenly just the poles appeared, and it was kind of sad that you couldn't come maybe and talk to us, since we are below and we are kind of vulnerable to whatever grows above us. And so this property is on the hill from us, and it's very visible. And I have to say that I always enjoyed the foliage and the hills visibility with harmony on top of it. And right now, the structure that is being proposed definitely is above the roofs of the other homes. So I see it kind of in a grand way in front of my house from my kitchen window. And then the new structure is just definitely towering with its roof line above existing surroundings. And so we would like to see consistency of the landscape of this, we call it Quant Hill. And this hill is very visible from our court and neighbors. As much as I appreciate the fact that it will be continuation of the gabled farmhouse that was there, I would like to ask if it's possible to lower that roof line, just to keep the harmony of the existing hill and its beauty. And also the windows, I'd like to know exactly how many windows will be there and what will I be seeing with this master suite and the deck that is being proposed. But it's something that we would like to ask you guys to maybe consider lowering the roof line. And that would conclude my presentation.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Now we open it up to the applicant for rebuttal.
Yeah, I say a couple of words. Is that okay?
Yes.
So, my name is Kim Thornfeldt, and I'm one of the owner of the house. So, I don't think it's a problem that we can lower down the roof line, so we keep the existing, just like Chris talked about. And regarding the screening, I'm all in favor of planting some native trees. I mean, you could talk about some oak trees, or we could talk some pepper trees, for example, or something like that. We don't really, from our place, don't really see any houses. I mean, if you could look from our windows, we can maybe see a house. There is a tree. Where are you located? Are you in the swimming pool, or where are you located?
Where am I? You see my view.
Okay, so this is his opportunity.
No, I don't really see any houses, and the roof, we see the roof line, but we don't see any windows. And then the nearest house is Pleasant Place number 3, which have sent you guys a letter in great support. And then Pleasant Place 5, which also have sent a letter to you guys with a great support. But back to the screening, if you plant some, because it's a very large lot, if you plant some evergreen trees on the outside perimeter, then we would be able, because they look from down and look up, and it'd be very easy to screen from the outside. So I don't think it's a problem that we can lower down the roof to the existing, so it's unity. And to plant some trees, we can even be proactive and start planting now. I do not. I planted several oak trees, and actually, the dirt is not very good. But we really get down and change the dirt and break up the sandstone. It does actually grow quite well.
I think it's a tree.
So, any question to me?
I don't. Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, I think I would just add that as a rebuttal that I think the issues like drainage and those are taken care of at the city level when we go through permit. And we've done I've done other projects in Lafayette, and Lafayette has very clear requirements on how you mitigate drainage and avoid it getting to neighboring properties. And the city's actually quite stringent in the planning, and not in your process, but in the next steps down in terms of maintaining, mitigating your water on site or onto your own streets.
Thank you. Okay, so I think, are there any public comments from Zoom?
There is. I have a hand raised from Ray Zagorowski.
Okay.
Sure. Mr. Zagorowski, you can speak. Can you hear us?
And he's still muted.
Can you unmute yourself?
There you go. I appreciate that. Yeah, I just wanted to say that I did send the picture to Samina's email just now. Apologize for not getting that in timely for your agenda. My wife spoke earlier. Beata.
Is that the extent of your comment?
Yeah, just that I concur with my neighbors, the Pauls, and with my wife that, you know, visually from our house, it's quite noticeable and is a different, it's more of an urban skyline. Maybe that's an overstatement, but it's just too high. We really appreciate it being lower.
Okay, thank you for your
Thank you.
comment. Okay. Thank you. So I'd like to thank everyone for their comments on this, and with that, we will open it up
Through
to.
Chair,
Oh.
I have a question to follow up on Mr. and Mrs. Paul's comment about the soil characteristics. I think as part of this application, you've already submitted a geotech report, correct? Or the city, right? I mean, we had it as part of our packet. So can, Samina, can you summarize the geotech report if you can for us? Because this is for Mr. and Mrs. Paul's concerns about the soil characteristics.
Question.
I know.
Yeah.
Especially for a
Well,
plan.
I'm so sorry. It's a building permit type of question, right, later
Not
down, the road,
really a
but it got raised, so we could, you know, Samina, it could be just like, this is something we'll be taking care of building permit, and then we're okay. But it's something that was submitted, right? Yeah.
Yes, so as part of the referral packet, it was also being sent to the city engineer for grading and drainage review. And he said he does not have any comments at this time. With the geotech report, when staff prepared, I just went over like the recommendation from like if the site is suitable for this addition. And yes, it talks about the footing and the new development, but yeah. About the grading and drainage on the other side, outside of the building envelope. I think that's the information that I don't know if it is included in the geotech report.
Okay, that's fine. I'm not gonna put you on the spot. You're not a geotech engineer, but we just wanted to make sure that Mr. and Mrs. Paul know that. We heard you. We're gonna, yeah. And then also it's about the organics, the tree characteristics, survivability of trees. And I think you mentioned it's difficult to have trees up there, but there might be a way, but that's something later on, right? Okay, but we have that registered. Okay.
All right.
So make sure we heard from them. Okay.
Okay. So we are now ready for commissioner comment. Is there anyone who'd like to begin?
My turn?
Sure.
Go for it, John.
I think, I mean, the real issue here, the heart of everything we're talking about is privacy for the neighbors. Privacy, I think, is different from height. They're two distinct and different issues. As I look at the drawings, adjusting the height of the tallest roof line, I don't believe does a thing for privacy, because all your windows are at the perimeter of the building at where the eave is. So right now, if I'm right, your roof slopes are all identical. You're matching existing with your new.
Yeah, and that was at about 7 and 12.
In my view, I think that makes the house feel a little more harmonious. And matching the roof slopes, and I don't believe that from adjacent properties, you would be aware of them, of the difference at all. What would the height difference be? You said it.
11 inches if we go to 6 and 12.
Yeah,
That matches the height, which it still looks good there. It matches.
In my view, I would recommend keeping the slopes as they are. I think the important ways to address privacy have to do with landscape screening, have to do with careful study of where windows are and making sure that we're not looking into each other's windows. I don't think that the height changes it. Regarding the story poles and the question of story pole accuracy, I don't know if you could put that same image back up. I'd like maybe the applicant to respond to that comment. I think I understand why it looks so much taller, but it's really not. But maybe we could see that image. I think it's just that it's closer to the camera, basically. So it feels like it's looming over you, but it's not really any higher.
If you look in your packet, there's a picture from Quant Court, and you can see it behind 1295, if you can find that photo.
It's just that it's a little closer to you.
Sort of the trick of perspective.
Yeah, so, and changing the roof line will be, I think, almost imperceptible. So I don't object to a change in the roof line. I don't think it's going to solve anything.
I think it's going forward, being on a slope, it just.
Well, that's right. That's right. And I believe that the way to solve that is with landscape screening, which may be challenging in your soil conditions. But I think it's important to solve that. I mean, I think this suggests that the facade that is being suggested by the story poles there is just closer to you, substantially closer to you than the roof is behind it. Am I right?
Is it possible to bring this up? Is that all right to show you further?
Did you close public comment?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we, closed public comment.
So anyway, that's my comment regarding the roof slopes. I think it's especially important to look at the visual privacy between the proposed deck and the adjacent neighbors down the hill. I would like to see, side sections and existing planning and proposed planning to understand that. Because I mean, privacy is a legitimate concern. Then, other than that, my comments are really kind of minor. You and I have a different feeling regarding the sort of the collage effect of different siding. It's an opinion. I will just leave it at that. In my view, the building would be more coherent if you continue the horizontal siding. In your view, the building is more interesting if you go to a board and batten. It's not a deal breaker probably for me, but just my opinion. One also kind of technical comment, the light fixtures, I think it would be great if they were dark sky compliant. The fixture in your package said it was, but it was incorrect. If you can see the light fixture horizontally when you're looking at it, it's not going to be dark sky compliant. I looked up that same fixture on a website and I couldn't find anything that said it was. So I just ask you to do a substitution there.
We've already considered one.
If there's a way to lower the height of that deck, if you can step down to it, I think that would help with potential sightline issues. And yeah, I think we talked about the other things. So those are my comments.
Yeah, so I'm gonna get right off the bat with the vertical and horizontal. John, I'm okay with that, because I think that it gives you texture, because what I'm looking at is your poetics, your approach of how you generate this idea, not to constrain you with your vocabulary to work the texture and collaging. Because if you just have horizontal or vertical, I think that it might flatten your language. So I respect John highly. So John is right a lot of times, and I believe that we can agree to disagree once in a while. I highly regarded colleague of mine here. So you can go with that in my opinion. Okay. The other thing that we're talking about with the roof height and all, just draw the two variations and from the angles, right? Make it realistic, make it truly realistic so that it demonstrates that it's either negligible, right? It's not making a difference, or it's making some difference for you guys. So you can see both and say, oh yeah, we agree. We're a community, we see and we prove it, then we can agree together, right? So show the two variables. Draw it. It might be nothing, or it might be significant. So draw the two variables. The other is the cross section through the site. We're not only talking about windows, but also what is that space in the neighbor's property? It could be a patio, but you've never seen anyone over there. So I believe that. But then the neighbors keep saying something else. So draw that also. Just draw it. Draw that. Draw everything you know about that. And that will demonstrate to each one of you, the neighbor and yourself, that here's a drawing. It's actually very specific. It's not talk. It's not emotional, but it's right there. Can we agree, right? And then just close that, right? So that's the way I would structure those two. So draw it, and then draw the two variations of the height of the roof. Because I think that, I'm with John on this one, John. I think that roof, the way it's made, and then the way you also present poetically, was good. I thought it nurtured that farm look that he was trying to aspire to get going. Okay, that's it.
Thank
All right.
Glenn?
Yeah, I have to admit, I had a lot of difficulty on piecing together the cross section with all the neighbors' comments and pictures, okay? But I had problems with some of the neighbors' pictures because I'm literally looking at the same, like, it looks to me like the same exact angle, and then one time I see a fence and one time I see no fence. And so I don't know if that's taken higher up. I'm looking for the fence down below. I can't figure out what it is. So what I would like to see is, no, we're gonna, but what I would like to see is redo those cross sections. You can dot in the two variations on roof if you lowered and whatever, so everyone, what's happening is the story poles are distorting it, so it looks like it's gigantic, you know? And if you do that cross section and then show us where you're gonna plant the tree in relationship to what the adjoining property is, okay? So in other words, take 1293 Quant and do a cross section there. Take Candy Lane and do a cross section there, and do 292, I guess, and do a cross section, 3 of them. And I don't know if the other comment I have is that I think even when you do the cross section, there's going to be a problem with that deck. And I don't think the deck can remain, because I don't think you're going to be able to hide it. In regards to trees, you know, you can talk to an arborist, or you can, live oak will be evergreen. That's one solution. I really like cork oaks, and actually I have cork oaks growing on my property, and I have the sandstone as well. And literally it's in probably 10 years, it's tripled its height. Yeah. So, and the nice thing about the cork oak is that it's evergreen, and it has, it tends to grow higher than it does wider. So you can grow several of them and get more of a screening off of them.
Pro bono service.
Yeah.
The live oaks don't grow as fast. Okay, I've grown live oaks and they will not be 3 times higher in 10 years. Okay. So that's it. I mean, I need to see those cross sections, because I really, I'm having a hard time. And like I said, I think the deck is, I don't see how you're gonna hide that deck. And that draws people outside, whereas the master bedroom, you don't have that much activity up to the windows looking out and spying. But if you could put a deck out there, then I can't say that same thing. Okay.
I agree with my colleagues, with the exception of the comment about the siding. I like the sort of variety of siding, but again, I don't think that's a critical element of the design in terms of what the questions are about tonight. Overall, I think it's a well-conceived design that achieves the sort of farmhouse aesthetic, that has a sort of a collection of different building masses coming together. I'm inclined to keep this consistent roof slope. To me, that gives it a coherency, that as you have a collection of different masses, it's nice to share that roof slope. But again, I think you've already mentioned that you've drawn it, and I think it would be helpful when we see the project again to see what the different solutions might produce, and see if the compromise is worth it. Overall, what I think we really want to see is just some real clarity about how the neighbors are impacted for privacy and views. And I think you can really clearly do that with these site sections. I think there's a lot of information in the drawing set already, but I think just some almost more diagrammatic sections that show the landscape, the two building masses and indicate where some windows are would make it really explicitly clear. So I don't think it's a significant change. I actually think it's just more documentation that would help us feel really confident that you're achieving the necessary privacy. And again, I think the biggest question for me is that deck achieving that privacy? So I think we may or may not be skeptical now, but what we really want to do is see the drawings that prove it one way or the other to us as well as your community. So the resolution or the motion would be that we would have you back to present this additional information. And I don't know if we want to set the date. Yeah.
How much time do you need? Because you have to give it a week before to the staff.
So we could either, you'd have to give it to the staff by Monday for the meeting 2 weeks from now, or for the April 10th meeting, you would have 3 weeks to prepare that. And
Excuse me, Chair. Staff recommendation was to continue to April 10th.
okay,
Gives you 3 weeks of prep time.
Yeah, that's fine. I mean, it could, yeah. We could do it before, if there's room on the docket.
I don't know that there is.
We would have to check. I think it's already full.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, so the recommendation is to continue this matter to April 10th. Do I have
So moved. Make it quick.
Second.
Okay, and we will have a vote. John?
Aye.
Glenn?
Aye.
Aye.
And Kristen is also aye. So thank you, everyone, for your comments, and we will see you on April 10th.
Nice seeing everyone after COVID.
It is.
Seeing people. Community.
Okay. We have a couple more items on our agenda, but you are welcome to remain, but you're also welcome to head home. So thank you. For first other business, do we have an ARC volunteer for March 24th?
Yeah. Yes, tentatively, I can do it.
Thank you.
What time is it? Because I can be Glenn's in the future alternate once in a while. Glenn.
It's usually at 9:30, right?
9:30. Ouch.
But I think on occasion they've moved it earlier. For me, it's easier to do it earlier.
Yeah. Yeah, I have a trade secret. I'm in the building.
Exactly.
Well, they don't.
Make it work.
Yeah, so
I think
I can report to
9:30.
duty.
No, you said the 21st. The 21st is.
24th.
Okay.
Okay, Glenn's doing it. So we always thank Glenn for that, but once in a while, Glenn, you just
Yeah,
tired of it, just let me know once in a while. Looks like
I'll let you
Kristen's
know.
gonna do
Yeah,
it.
I can
If
always.
St. Mary's wins both games.
Oh, then I gotta,
You know,
yeah.
if they win on Friday and Sunday,
Well,
then I'll be going to another city.
Yeah, we're gonna see you on TV
I can
somewhere.
do it, and preferably,
Okay.
I would do it at 9, but I can,
Okay.
I just have a 9:30 staff meeting, but I can
Yeah.
skip it.
So I heard.
I'm gonna do it.
Cass for.
Yeah, I'll do it first.
Glenn's
Yeah.
doing it.
I don't think St. Mary's is gonna make it though.
Okay.
Nor did the analyst.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
I want to make a comment. I really like this. Something's really interactive here. You know, we're gonna get used to it, but we got cameras, we got, we can send, like
But I'll
silent.
also
and then we-
say the
right?
meeting probably took 50% longer.
Longer
Yeah.
because of that. Ah,
Which
yeah,
I guess is
yeah.
okay,
Yeah.
because there's more engagement.
Yeah, more transparency maybe. I don't know. Yeah.
Well, plus we had 5 items.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that was
Yeah.
We don't usually have.
There were only 4, weren't there?
4, well,
It
yeah,
was
4. Yeah,
Um,
4.
All right, pay attention, we still have our agenda. Any commissioners' reports?
No.
Staff liaisons reports?
None.
Okay, and with that, we can conclude our meeting. So,
Great. Nice meeting, Kirsten.
I think it was hard to there were a lot of riled up. Yeah. It was an emotional meeting.
Yeah.